Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us. I know you are very busy, and as a head coach in the Big 12, you don't get much time off, but what have the last 2 months looked like since the season ended?
Yeah, it's been fun. There's not really this breath after season. You have to ramp up again because it's portal season. It's a new season, it's postseason. You're really getting in the gym with your kids and trying to work on player development, all while recruiting and filling voids from the portal. So we had a successful portal season, cheered on our incoming freshmen as they ended their high school careers, and a lot to look forward to in year two.
Yeah, speaking of the portal season, we'll get into all of that, but how have you navigated as a head coach in a big conference like the Big 12, the transfer portal in this day and age of college athletics?
Well, it was night and day from year one to year two, because year one, we had to get 9 in. And when you are going at that rapid fire of a pace, it's like speed dating. You have to get to know them really, really fast. Is it a fit? Is it not a fit? You hope it's a fit and you hope it worked out. I'm so blessed that it did work out. The kids that we brought in early, it was the right pieces at the right time. And they really set the foundation for us to be able to recruit at a new level this year. And so we didn't have to get the quantity that we did in year one. Our core returned. We've got a really good culture. Our kids are happy. So we have a good core returning, and then we're able to plug in strategically from the portal where we needed players and where we needed positions.
I'm glad you brought that up, because last season, all 5 of your starters were transfers. Start the season 15-0, best start in program history. Whenever you take a look at players that enter the portal or recruiting high schoolers, incoming freshmen, what are some of those non-negotiables that you're looking for in kids?
Yeah, what a smart question, because it's a big part of who we are as a program. We want to recruit high character individuals, someone that's going to enhance our brand. Someone that when they're walking around with Arizona State around their chest, we're proud because they're a good human, they're a good steward of the community. We have little eyes looking up to them, and they take that part of kind of their job seriously as a role model to the youth. So we want to make sure they have a chip on their shoulder, they're hardworking, they compete, all of the things that are necessary to win basketball games. But we want to make sure that they're representing who we want them to be as a person and a steward of Arizona State.
And to that point, I've heard you say before, you'll have culture checks.
Yeah.
In practice, maybe during a game. Explain that to us. What does a culture check look like for you?
It's kind of in the moment feedback. You know, I always say this, I became a better coach when I became a better mom. And if you're going to teach your kid a lesson, it can't be 2 days later or, a couple hours later. It has to be that kind of instant feedback. It has to be very matter of fact. It has to be non-judgmental. And so these culture checks are exactly that. We'll do a captain's culture check. We might have a coach do a culture check. We might have the locker room as a whole do a culture check. And it's just putting those guardrails on how we want things to look and feel throughout the season. And if we miss it, we can get right back on track by just having those culture checks throughout the season.
How do you think that accountability led to the success you had in your first season at Arizona State?
Well, I think any player will tell you a player-led locker room is maybe more fun and more exciting, something to buy into, a lot more than a coach's led locker room. So when your players get it and they're really speaking kind of what you're thinking and you're on that same page and there's buy-in, there's a lot of value to that. And what we're seeing is when the players lean in, when the players are bought in, then the whole vibe is so much better.
Yeah. And I heard you say before, I'm glad you brought this up again, you became a better coach when you became a better mom. You have 2 young kids, 9 and 6, I think are their ages. As a mom of 2 myself, I know that is not easy, especially navigating your schedule and being such an elite head coach. How did your perspective just on the game of basketball or game of life change when you became a mom?
I put my kids in my basketball kids' shoes. So I'm like, how would I want Crosby, my daughter, to be treated? How would I want her to go through this growth process with people who love and support her? Now, push her hard.
Yeah.
So that's the thing about parenting and coaching. There's an accountability and kind of this approach. You have to lead maybe with a firm hand sometimes, but you do that with a gentle heart. And when you can combine those two, there's just endless possibilities in their growth and their development. So there's a lot of correlation between momming and coaching.
Absolutely. And both of us played in college, and that age from 17, 18 years old to 22 as a young female, you're vulnerable. It's really important to be able to have a coach that's going to navigate you in the right direction. How much pride do you take in your coaching style to, you want to help these players, but you also have to lead them in the direction you want them to go?
Yeah, it's most important.
Yeah.
I think developing confidence in young women, we always have a saying in our program, do both well. Sometimes that may be on the basketball court. You have to guard the skip, but also protect the paint. You have to stop drive and stop shot. Well, it's also in life, and I want to model the behavior. I want to be able to do both well in my personal life, as a wife, as a mom, and also have this career. Yeah. And I want to give them the confidence to do that same thing. And when they walk out of these Arizona State doors, they should be equipped with the tools to thrive.
Absolutely. I look up to you, being able to watch you navigate, be a head coach at such an elite level, and be a wife and a mom. I think it's awesome. And you also brought up a really good point just about how you're bringing in the right type of players to Arizona State. How do you think that recruiting the right type of players has also allowed you to have early success there?
Well, because in this environment, when it's sometimes a lot about money and external factors, we really focus on the why. I want to bring hoopers. I want to bring kids who just love the game. They love the gym. They want to get better. So you have to have that love of the game first. Mm-hmm. And then you have to want to get better. In our program, we're always about player development and competing at the highest level. So there's natural competition that evolves, which is great. Yep. There's opportunity to play in the system. It's a fun brand to play, high tempo, defensive centered. So we're playing a lot in the open court. And then there's got to be this sense of connection and that connectivity that we've formed with the team and how they have each other's back. We've always said it's we before me, and the team is greater than any individual self-interest. And so those are the type of kids that have really succeeded in our program.
And I heard you say last season a lot, you'll say jump, they'll say how high. Mm-hmm. How have you gotten them, though, to not only buy into what you're doing there, but buy into each other? I have to think it's got to be hard having different teammates every season. You are bringing back a lot of consistency from last year's roster, but how have they bought into each other and believed in each other?
When you're on the same page with your goals, that becomes a resonating theme on your daily habits. And that's what culture is, right? It's daily habits. Yeah. And we talk about gratitude a lot in our program. So when you have a group that shares that commonality of gratitude, and what's fun is our locker rooms, we have so many different backgrounds, different personalities, but here we are coming together to accomplish a goal. That's what our community should look like. And so when you have that, and you have that invested interest, and everyone's on the same page, it just makes your goals fun to chase. And when you do it with this genuine heart, let's admit, the highs are high and the lows are lows in sport. Yep. But when you go through this together and you have these goals, and it's just a bunch of different people in one room, like putting their head down and doing the work, we always say the work is the reward, and I've found that to be true in our program.
Yeah, and it has to be hard too in this day and age where everything is on your phone, everything's on social media. But one of those positives is I can watch a game, I can get on social media afterwards, and I can see all your amazing game day fits. I love how your outfits have taken the national media by storm. Do you have a personal stylist? Is this all you? Where do these outfits come about?
One of my little guilty pleasures is finding a good one and then stockpiling them in my closet. And about this time, I'll go through and I'll just do a complete spring cleaning, and I'll start to think like, oh, this might be cute. This might be cute. I might have to have some help with the way that the expectation has been now. I guess I've done that to myself, but it's fun. I always walk into pregame and I'll know by my girls' reaction if I hit or if I missed on my outfit, and they'll keep me young. And now they're even shopping for me. I got one text the other day. They're like, Coach Miller, this would look so cute on you. I'm like, okay, buy it for me and I'll Venmo you. So they are keeping me young and fresh.
I love that. And you have a daughter that's going to keep you young and fresh as well, and might be able to recycle some of those clothes for her in about 20 years.
Like, I'm never going to wear what mom wears, but I'm like, hey, I'm cool. It's hip at some point.
I love it. I love the balance that you have created. And lastly, just on the basketball culture, you guys like to play fast, and your defense is something that always stands out to me when I'm watching tape of your team play. Where did that cultural identity come from your style of play and how you've been able to bring it to Arizona State?
Well, if I stood up, I'm a little 5'6" point guard, so my stature just yielded me to be a defensive ankle biter. That's where I earned my keep on the basketball court. So I always had a love of that side of the game. And really, that's a controllable side. Your shot isn't always going to fall. You might not be in a good offensive rhythm, but your effort can always dictate your defensive intensity. So that's been the basis of our culture and something I'm pretty convicted to, that side of the ball. And I'm happy that it's transcended the levels, as I started from Division II and then went to mid-major and now a P4 conference. We've seen it transcend, so that's a good thing that the brand still causes havoc, you know, when you're out there. And it's been fun to coach. It's fun to play, and it's really fun to watch this style.
It absolutely is fun to watch. It goes back to those non-negotiables you were telling us about, the attitude, the effort, the body language. And as you mentioned, you can always play defense. If your shot's not followed, you can always get back on defense. So I want to do a couple fun questions with you right now, just to get to know Molly Miller a little bit better. I know you don't have much time off, but if you do have time off, what are you doing?
I'm probably trying to discover a new restaurant or something. I'm a foodie.
Okay.
I'm a big time foodie. So, you know, in Phoenix, Tempe, Scottsdale area, there's restaurants on every block. So I'm trying to make my rounds and do the foodie little mini food tour.
Yeah, I love that. What about vacation spots?
You know,
where's your favorite?
Wherever my family is having fun. I'm kind of a low-key beach gal. If I'm going with my mom and my sister and taking a girls trip, take me to New York City. Yeah. Let's go to Broadway.
Okay.
Let's do the foodie thing there. Okay. And then my husband, he got me into snowboarding. So I'm a very eclectic vacationer if we have time.
So from New York City to snowboarding, I love it. You can do it all.
We can't forget about the relaxing
beach.
You
can do it all. If you were back in your playing days, or even now as a coach, you're walking into an arena, what would you say would be your walkout song that best describes you?
So you know what's they all have these headphones and they all get in the zone. I was not a music person getting in the zone. I was more of a vibes, and like I kind of take in the environment. If the band's warming up, or I'll listen to coach. Like I wasn't a huge music person. I didn't really need that. Now, Nelly, Heart of a Champion always got me pumped up.
I was going to say, so is that your karaoke song, or what are we singing karaoke
Nelly,
to?
Hot in Here would be my karaoke song. No shame. I can rap those lyrics.
I love it. I love that. Kind of on that line, how do you want opponents to feel when they're stepping into your arena and they're going up against your squad?
Tired before the tip. I want them to feel tired. You know, I always say playing us should be like going to the dentist. No one wants to do it.
Yep, I love that. Although I'm weird because I do love going to the dentist. I am kind of weird about that. But some other like fun ones. Who would you say is your celebrity lookalike?
I feel sorry for her, but because all my I don't have TikTok, but all my girls would send me these things about like Livy Dunn being a little
my goodness, I see it.
I feel sorry for her because I'm like 20 years her senior.
Hey, that's a compliment.
Maybe a really younger version.
Yeah, no,
it's just the blonde hair.
I see it. What's one thing your players make fun of you for? They got to keep you humble.
Yeah, they do. I mean, when I did the Dougie, they said I used too many arms, like too much arm movement. So I guess I got to bring it in a little bit. I'll always like throw out a dance move, and they probably think I'm ridiculous, but they egg me on.
Hey, I love it. Once again, keeping you young, humbling you.
I'll tighten up those dance moves,
love
girls.
That. Okay, last coach. As we enter the off season and we look ahead to next season, what excites you the most about your returning players and the transfer portal, the players that you have added, into what fans can expect out of your team next season?
There's this family vibe in our program, and I love getting to know them as young women, and then I love getting to blend the two. You know, every year at this time, they start to get on campus, and they start to come over my house, and then my kids start to meet them. And we have this tradition where Crosby, my daughter, will put jerseys up in the entryway, and they have to sign the jerseys. So just developing those new traditions with a new group, and also making old traditions stay alive. And that's what I love about this job too, is you can blend the two. So when my kids come to the gym, they're acting like they run the place, and they probably do. When my players come to my house, they're building Legos, they're building forts. I'm really excited about that for year two. And then just the you know, we're leveling up and there's been buzz and excitement and there's a good floor now that we have, but we're never satisfied and we always want to improve and do better. So I'm excited about this roster and what we did in the portal and how we're building our freshmen and returners and putting a product on the floor that Arizona State can be proud of.
Yeah, you absolutely can be proud of it. Coach, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Peterson jams it. Oh, what a finish by Darren Peterson. Just goes right over the top of two BYU defenders, including Keba Keita, for a spectacular finish.
A guy that's got a little bit of height, Darren Peterson, who I feel like is probably as good a prospect slash player that I've ever been on.
Looks so easy at times. Look at that. Careful. And then the bounce off of two, the finish. Never in a hurry.
I would say something that motivates me is myself. I'm self-motivated. I don't come from much, so I'm just prepared to go out there, leave on the court. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I've been loving basketball from the jump. My dad was a coach, my older brother played, and it was just something I knew I would do with my life.
To see it, John. Under 90 seconds. They find Peterson. Launches. Oh, boy. And even topping challenges, but that's Darren Peterson's to a T. Great. Yep. Deep in the corner, Peterson. He's got in the gym range. Now posting up. Off the glass and in. How did he get that one in? But Peterson, the creativity, the strength. This is important.
but in late clock situations, you want to get it to your money guy, and a little crossover there to get a little separation.
Nobody's within 5 feet of him that whole possession. I'll tell you what, if there's one guy you can't lose on this team, it's Peterson.
And away we go. Happy Friday. Taman Turner, T-Chains, in today for James. Looking a little bit like Trump as you danced this morning, Taman. It's like a Trump move right there.
Let me do the moonwalk. Like, boom, boom, boom.
This is a Fanatic Friday. Great to have you with us today and every day here at your home for the Big 12. Big 12 Radio on TuneIn and Big 12 Studios. Of course, you can always check us out at big12studios.com. That's where you can find all the platforms in which you can live stream us each and every morning from 7 to 10 a.m. Central, 8 to 11 Eastern Time. We are loaded up today. Ross Dellinger, one of the best in the business, joins us coming up in about 16 minutes from right now. We've got a College World Series game this afternoon between West Virginia and Troy. The West Virginia side of the College World Series gets underway today, this afternoon. Troy, West Virginia at 1. Ole Miss, North Carolina at 6 o'clock tonight. And then the winners will face off against one another. And a great opportunity here for West Virginia. Its first ever College World Series, by the way, and the latest updates via the Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge. It's a 2-horse race at this point in time. Ole Miss, 1,735. West Virginia, 1,471. But there are some West Virginia fans claiming that some of those are that they haven't seen very many Ole Miss fans and that those seem to be inflated. So I don't know. Maybe there's an SEC bias here, another moral victory here for another hypothetical win for the SEC. I'm not sure, Taman.
Yeah, I think that this is hyped up. I mean, look, you said yesterday that LSU won with, 70,000?
77,000, I believe.
77,000, yeah. So I'm pretty sure that if Ole Miss is winning, there's a background story to it. No doubt about it. The SEC would do that.
Some massive SEC conspiracy, 100%. They can't win championships in football, so they've got to win the Rocco's Jello Shot Challenge every year, and they've got to ice the books to do it. We've got the basketball schedule matrix, which was released. Some really interesting and intriguing home-and-home series matchups, which we'll get into. But, of course, the huge news continues to be around Brendan Sorsby. As when we left the show yesterday, the latest dialogue out of the Big 12 was that they were set to have their executive board meeting in which they would start to discuss penalties, sanctions on Texas Tech. That was what was released publicly. Well, shortly thereafter, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, gets involved. Paxton, by the way, who's in the middle of a Senate race, he releases a statement. The Texas Attorney General sent a formal letter to the Big 12 alerting the conference that Texas Tech would take any legal action against a league sanction. That's a new one. The Texas Attorney General reaching out to the Big 12 to be like, hey, by the way, just so you know, this little executive board meeting you've got, they are ready. I love how he gets involved to say Tech will do this. Incredible. So the Big 12 then releases a statement because, of course, they did. Anytime the Attorney General reaches out, you probably should listen. Brett McMurphy, Big 12's Brett Yormark. Shortly before the start of today's Big 12 Executive Board meeting, the conference received a letter from the Texas Attorney General's office notifying the conference of potential legal action from Texas Tech if the conference pursues certain actions under its bylaws. We're taking time with our legal counsel to understand the concerns of the state, and we'll meet again with the full board next week. We moved forward with our executive board today in preparation for our full board meeting on Monday. We have a good and informative discussion. Sentiment among the executive board was no different from what we heard from the ADs earlier in the week. Our discussion with the full board will determine our course of action, and all options remain on the table, end quote.
This is I can't wait for Ross to talk about this because there's a lot going on here. So Ken Paxton is running for the U.S. Senate seat here in Texas. That's open, right? And there have been talks about the donations that Ken Paxton has received
from Cody Campbell.
I don't know how that'll play out. I don't know how that will, get into this. I mean, that's speculation on our part. But the fact that you have that it's come down to this. Now you're bringing the Attorney General's office involved. There's going to be a lot of legal implications for this. This thing is far from over.
Yeah, I mean, you have the Attorney General of Texas threatening the Big 12 conference, and you have what appears to be a little bit of infighting now amongst the conference, which is something that is we're not used to in the Big 12. Jeffrey Kessler, Brandon Sorsby's attorney, also sent a letter to the Big 12. Quote, a boycott of Texas Tech or of Mr. Sorsby would be a per se violation of antitrust laws and expose the Big 12 and each of its boycotting members to substantial liability. There is no defense to a per se unlawful boycott of this type, and Mr. Sorsby will hold the Big 12 and its members fully accountable for their actions, end quote. Now, most people have pointed out, how could Brandon Sorsby hold those accountable for his actions when he's not being held accountable for his actions? A couple of things on this. So I think, Brett Yormark has clearly dealt with a lot of chaos in his time as the commissioner of the Big 12. I mean, he signed a new TV deal. He negotiated the exit terms for Texas and Oklahoma, and then eventually added 4 schools for the Pac-12, all in his first year on the job. But now a situation in which, you've had unity amongst the conference pretty much since you started. Obviously, I'm sure there's been disagreements and infighting, but whenever they've spoken publicly, it's been consensus, it's been unity. So now we have a very public spat playing out that will very much test the leadership of Brett Yormark in a way that he has not been challenged. Yormark has aced every test from a leadership perspective so far. This one, though, is extremely complicated because you're not going to get consensus.
Right.
You've got Texas Tech on one side saying they have the legal grounds to do this. You have 15 other schools saying, we can't let you do this.
This seems to be a debate between legality and ethics. They're like, yes,
correct,
saying
correct.
Texas Tech legally has the right to do this, but is it right ethically? And that's the debate that I think the Big 12 school members are fighting right now.
Well, and you hope that it doesn't do irreparable harm. Texas Tech means a lot to the Big 12.
Yes.
The Big 12, I don't want to say needs Texas Tech, but the Big 12 needs big football brands. Brett Yormark said as much during last year's Big 12 media days for football. He didn't call out Texas Tech specifically, but mentioning, the Big 12 needs consistent brands at the top of the sport. And that right now is Texas Tech because of the funds they have in order to play that game. But this is a dangerous game Texas Tech is playing right now. And on top of all of this, with all the dialogue surrounding them, Texas Tech then releases a 22-minute video last night trying to explain the situation. This included Texas Tech President Lawrence Skuvenek, the Athletic Director Kirby Hocutt, Coach Joey McGuire, and the Athletic Director for Student Athlete Health and Wellbeing, Grant Stovall. And, man, I just – we talked about this yesterday. The more you try to explain, the more you look guilty, right? It's like with your kids. Like, the more that they try to explain what happened and over-explain, it's like the more guilty you look, the guiltier and guiltier you look.
If you're explaining, you're losing.
I mean, that's it. And so, like, I think Texas Tech should have gotten out in front of this immediately to try to control the narrative.
I feel like they tried. Like, when this story initially broke, Texas Tech released a statement saying Brendan Sorsby was going into treatment and whatnot due to gambling. I think where they have messed up, at least from a PR standpoint, is that they don't really seem to be aligned, and now they're trying to get aligned publicly. You had Joey McGuire, you have Kirby Hocutt making statements where they seemed more aligned, but then Cody Campbell would go on a media site or a media platform and say something totally different.
No, it's so true. And I the problem is if you're Texas Tech, you're trying to take on so many different arguments, and so you're trying to address them all individually, and it's like, don't do that.
Right.
Be in control and lean into, as they have certainly in parts of this video, the mental health aspect of it. Whether people buy it or not, like that doesn't really matter here. This is a legitimate reason why you won this case and got this injunction. This is a legitimate reason for all of this. So I don't think you need to, like, well, this isn't murder, or they've done this, or that's done that. Like, at this point, just lean into the Sorsby mental health part of it, and don't worry or address any other of those topics. The more you explain this, the worse you look.
If they had gotten ahead of it and said, look, we are monitoring Brendan Sorsby's mental health, our most important aspect is we want Brendan Sorsby to be healthy, and that's what we're going to focus on, and ran with that, and then said he's healthy, he's going to play, they could have this could have not gone to how it's escalated right now.
Yeah, no. Well said. Here is what Kirby Hocutt said. No, excuse me. Here's what Lawrence Skuvanek, the president of Texas Tech, said during this 22-minute video about the NCAA gambling rules regarding Sorsby.
Circumstances in their individual case, you see things differently. Now, we did ask the NCAA to consider modifying or changing their policies when we wrote that letter welcoming him back. But I think we have to recognize that the rules in place now were made long before there were millions of young people walking around with a legal gambling apparatus in their pocket, and that our consideration today needs to take into account the fact of medically diagnosed conditions and the circumstances in which they live. And so I'm very proud to be sitting here with these colleagues supporting Brendan, but that support goes way beyond this room.
Yeah, and look, I think that's the right sentiment. The problem is it seems a little bit too late. And again, as like the narrative has sort of, spiraled out of control, that probably should have been said at the front end continually. Because now you've got multiple athletic directors, calling out the Black Sox scandal in 1919 or Pete Rose, right? And like, this ain't that. And to call it that is completely disingenuous to the reality and the context of 2026 sports gambling. I understand that the sport has to protect itself from the idea that its integrity is compromised and that games are compromised. I completely understand that. But, like, equating this to the Black Sox scandal, where multiple players took money from gamblers to throw a World Series, this ain't that. It's not even close. It's not even in the same vicinity, not in the same zip code as that.
No, it's not. And to your point, this is kind of quote-unquote too little, too late from a PR standpoint, from the court of public opinion. I'm going political on this Friday. It could because the way that Texas Tech has acted, at least publicly, it creates the notion from other ADs of how much do you know and when did you know it?
Yep.
And now they're kind of backtracking. They're doing this 22-minute video saying, we're supporting Sorsby. This is our main goal, blah, blah, blah. You should have done that from the start. If you had came out that way, had all been aligned and said, we're focused solely on Brendan Sorsby's health as the number one aspect, football second, all of this could have been avoided.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. We've got some really good audio from Steve Sabins, the West Virginia head coach, as West Virginia kicks off the College World Series today at 1 o'clock. The Oma Ears taking on Troy. We'll break down the game for you, plus hear what Steve Sabins had to say at the podium as he addressed this tournament last night before the start of the College World Series and the West Virginia side of the bracket. On the way next, though, we're talking with Ross Dellinger, whose job has evolved over the last 5 years from breaking stories around rules in the NCAA to following all of the political and leanings out of D.C. and becoming more of a political reporter. Ross Dellinger from Yahoo joins us next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Jackson's in trouble now. David Bailey, he is a sack machine.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Always pleased to be joined by Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports. Ross, I love the College Football Inquirer podcast with you, Andy, and Stephen Godfrey, and I particularly loved the most recent episode. Even though you guys went on there knowing that the Big 12 had released a statement, or at least it was being circulated publicly, the Big 12 was getting together with its executive board to meet on potential sanctions or a penalty. And then shortly thereafter, the Attorney General and Jeffrey Kessler released statements to kind of force the Big 12's hand to walk that back. But, first off, I thought it was a really good episode of the College Football Inquirer podcast. You guys do some really interesting stuff, and it's all three different personalities and dynamics, so it's really good. Keep up the great work with that.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks. There's enough to talk about these days.
All right, so give us your perspective here as somebody that is covering this as closely as anybody. So the Big 12, with its executive council, was set to meet to discuss potential penalties here. The Attorney General reaches out on behalf of Texas Tech, and then Jeffrey Kessler releases a statement. So basically, the Texas Tech is threatening the Big 12 now with legal action if they take any action.
Yeah, basically, that's kind of what's going on. Yeah, you summed it up. It's a tough spot, I think, for the Big 12 to be in, because they've got, justifiably, they have some legal pressures on them that probably will be successful. I mean, when you look at if they sanction Texas Tech in a way that penalizes them for playing or intending to play Brennan Sorsby, that's a pretty easy case from talking to lawyers if you're Brennan Sorsby, because you've got an injunction already, and so you're sort of preventing a state institution from following its state court ruling, an order, and that's difficult. So that is. I don't know what is going to happen in the end of this, but it feels like there's going to have to be some resolution or negotiated compromise between the two sides, because any kind of real heavy sanction that will trigger another lawsuit from Texas Tech or Sorsby will probably be successful based on the initial ruling. So it's you want to try to avoid that in some way, and the only way to avoid that is to strike some kind of compromise or resolution with the school. Yeah.
I mean, do you think that what Tech is doing right now is doing irreparable harm?
I think a lot of people would say that. I think that would be the general feeling by plenty of people. We see whether it's transfer movement or athlete compensation or eligibility. We've seen those things attacked sort of in the courts. But what we really haven't seen attacked in the courts is this rule, sort of the sacred cardinal rule of college athletics. And I think that's why you're seeing the backlash. And clearly Texas Tech feels like it almost didn't expect that backlash. That's how it's acting, Yeah. I mean, they put out a 22-minute video Thursday night of 5 people sitting around a table talking about this issue: administrators, president, school president, coach. And so to me, it looks like they're kind of on fire duty here, putting out a fire that they didn't necessarily expect to be blazing as hot as it is, because it's pretty much universal that this is wrong. You just look at any kind of comment section in general, and you'll see that this is they don't have anybody really in their corner.
Ross, if Texas Tech and the Big 12 were to come to some type of compromise, as you mentioned, what would that look like?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the Texas Tech presidents, there's 16 of them, but Texas Tech wouldn't be involved in any kind of vote for any sanctions. So there'd be 15 of them. So they need 12 of 15 to sanction the school. In the way the bylaws read, they can sanction the school in whatever way they want, really. It gives them a pretty big opening to do a variety of things. If they tell Texas Tech, we're going to end up doing this, and Texas Tech says, well, we're going to sue, I think that's where you start to talk, the two sides start to talk about, well, what can we do where you won't sue? And because a lawsuit probably is, if you talk to lawyers, going to be successful based on the previous injunction order. So I think the Big 12's got to find a way to come to some kind of resolution. I don't know for sure, but I don't imagine that Texas Tech in the Brennan Sorsby camp is gonna take, as far as game suspension, I don't know they're gonna take much more than they already have, which is the 2 games. Like, I don't. So then you look at, if it's not going to be some kind of suspension, and maybe it is still, maybe the Big 12 doesn't care and they're just going to plow ahead and suspend them. A lot of people want them to do that. The AD room certainly wants that. But if it's not going to be a suspension, then there's only one option left, which is a fine.
Yeah, which I can't imagine would satiate athletic directors as much as they love money, as we all do. Ross, one of the things I loved about the podcast this week was just Godfrey riffing on some of the outlandish, ridiculous, jump the shark moments from the media in this Sorsby stuff. But I'm curious because I think you guys had a great, back and forth on just the way in which gambling is so intertwined right now with the sport. You have the NCAA deal with, selling data to outlets that then turn around and sell those to books. You guys mentioned that there's lots of platforms that are sponsored by books, and so even many opinions coming out of this. And there's literally a DraftKings network. I mean, how do you kind of reconcile that as somebody that covers the sport with, the NCAA's or the participants' own culpability in it?
Yeah, I think we said this on the pod, but I'll say it again because I think it's pretty hilarious. I had a friend of mine send me sort of like an alert from another news outlet over the Brennan Sorsby stuff, and at the top of it, it says this is like a news alert, and then under the news alert it says powered by BetMGM. A judge's decision to restore Texas Tech quarterback Brennan Sorsby's eligibility after he gambled on his team is, that it's just like, it's crazy, right? I mean, you can't make it up. It's everywhere. Plenty of podcasts and shows are sponsored by sports books, and so it's incredibly prevalent. The NCAA is not going to the level of allowing it, like in commercials in the NCAA during the NCAA basketball tournament or anything like that. But there are plenty of commercials that you can find about it. So I understand, and Lawrence Chovanec, the Texas Tech president, in the video they produced on Thursday night, he sort of mentioned some of this and said that we all have to keep in mind that the world looks different right now than it did a few years ago or several years ago when this rule was sort of implemented. But the ironic thing about that, of course, is the NCAA was trying to give more flexibility last fall for athletes to gamble, specifically on pro sports. And they did. They passed a proposal allowing athletes to bet on pro sports. And then that proposal, in an effort led by the power conferences, was rescinded. And Texas Tech voted to rescind that proposal. So that's, notable given all this.
Yeah. Ross, we've talked a lot with you over the years about bills that have circulated through the House or the Senate. You've documented it well that none of these have made it out of committee. So, all these years of lobbying, all this hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying on the NCAA's behalf in 5 years has amounted to nothing. This latest bill, will that follow the same track? And is CBA the only way out?
It's been 7 years since the NCAA and the power and the conferences began their lobbying effort for congressional legislation. And over that 7 years, what they have wanted, what they've asked for, has changed. Right? It's changed given this sort of the era. But in those 7 years, we probably had somewhere around 15 to 20 college sports bills introduced. We've had probably 15 hearings or so. We've had one bill get out of committee, in which is kind of like, if there are 3 steps to get a bill out of each chamber, the first step is a hearing, the second step is a committee markup where it gets out of committee, and then the third step is the floor. And you have each of those steps in each of the chambers, House of Representatives in the Senate. Okay, so that we've had one bill get through the second step of one of the chambers.
Wow.
And that bill never got to the floor, the SCORE Act. It never got to the floor. Now we have another bill here in the Senate that's similar to the SCORE Act, but not exactly, right? It's got probably 70 to 80% of what the SCORE Act had in it, and it's got like 20 to 30% of some other stuff that's more bipartisan. That bill has now reached the second step. The SCORE Act had reached the third step. It just never got to the floor. So the second step, they'll have a markup in the committee next Thursday for this bill. Usually when you do a markup in committee, you're assuming you have the votes to get it out of committee and then on to the floor. But to get it to the floor, you've got to have enough votes in the chamber, and you need 60 Senate votes, which means you need at least seven Democrats to vote for this bill. I think a lot of people on Capitol Hill feel confident this vote has enough in the Senate to pass. The issue is when it gets to the other chamber, will it have enough votes in the House, which is a Republican majority, but a lot of people don't like this bill for various reasons, including the 2 biggest stakeholders in the industry. The SEC and Big Ten are against this bill. They cover 26 states, the SEC and Big Ten footprint. That's 52 senators, and over 300 of the 435 House members are from SEC states.
Wow. Ross, so it's 7 years ago that you went from a college sports reporter to a political reporter? Is that what happened?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's been a long 7 years.
Do you have a law degree, Ross?
Do I have a law degree? No, I do not have a law degree.
You
Although
kind
a
of
few
do,
people
though,
think
I feel
I have a
like.
law degree. Yeah, I have an honorary law degree. The way things are going.
Yeah, so I'll say I'm not a lawyer, but sometimes I like to play one on the radio because it feels like all of us talking about this, you need law degrees because it is complicated. And that, even if this bill passes, which it sounds like what you're saying, it won't because the Republican-controlled House is in SEC country, and most of those will do what the SEC would want them to do, I would imagine. But even if it does, I'm sure Kessler's lining up lawsuits against the bill, right? Wouldn't he be?
The bill works within the framework of the House settlement, so it wouldn't impact Kessler's House settlement. Now it could trigger a bunch of other lawsuits potentially. The bill basically limits athlete movement with the one-time transfer exception returning, and then it caps eligibility at 5 years, and it sort of protects or caps the cap to a little more. So there may be spin-off lawsuits, whether it's from Kessler or whoever, right. But it does work within the House settlement, so there's no issue with how the bill sort of operates when it comes to the House case.
Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports. Go check out the great work that Ross and his colleagues do at Yahoo Sports, and of course make sure to check out the College Football Inquirer podcast with Ross, Stephen Godfrey, and Andy Staples. It's one of the best out there. Ross, thank you as always for your time. We very much always appreciate you taking the time to join us. Be well, take care, and enjoy the weekend.
Hey, guys. Thanks.
Ross Dellinger, one of the best in the business, joining us here on Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Today, giving us the lowdown where he sees it. He is at the forefront of all of this reporting and has been instrumental in it, in understanding the law and all of that stuff behind it. It's great stuff, as always, to read and to listen to what Ross has to say on this stuff. It's Big 12 Today, Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. We've got the consensus on the way, taking a look at who is number 15 in the Big 12 after we started our new series in the offseason called The Consensus. On the way next, so let's talk about the new basketball schedule matrix and some of the most intriguing 2027 Big 12 matchups in Big 12 basketball. And the West Virginia College World Series run starts today. We're breaking it all down next. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. Big 12 Today, presented by Modelo here on Big 12 Radio and Big 12 Studios. You know, the Big 12 has been the #1 ranked conference on KenPom in 3 of the past 5 seasons, and so they released yesterday their Big 12 scheduling matrix for the upcoming season, and there's some juicy matchups. We'll touch on those in a moment. Plus, West Virginia starts in the College World Series this afternoon. There are 8 teams left in college baseball. One of them is West Virginia for the first time ever playing in Omaha, the Oma Ears. And we'll be breaking down that game today, the series overall, winning the opportunity to win a couple of games and get onto the winner's side of the bracket. And we'll also hear from Steve Sabins, their head coach, about some of the really more intriguing things around the program and how they ended up in Omaha. Taman Turner, T-Chains, is in today for James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. It's Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo. All right, the Big 12 basketball matrix. So just to recap, each team plays 18 games. There's a home and away series with 3 opponents, plus 6 home-only and 6 road-only single games. That makes the 18 total. The most notable home and home matchups are Iowa State, Kansas, Texas Tech, Houston, BYU, Arizona, Houston, Arizona, Baylor, Kansas, in honor of Bob Huggins, West Virginia, and Cincinnati. Kansas has a really tough away-only schedule with Arizona, Houston, and BYU. So Kansas is used to having the toughest home-and-home schedule. They don't have Arizona at home-and-home anymore, but now they have them on the road this season along with BYU and Houston. Cincinnati, by the way, only has Arizona on the road. Cincinnati welcomes Houston and Kansas to Cincinnati this year, so that's a huge opportunity for Jared Calhoun in year 1 for him. Houston will play all of its toughest games at home, only with BYU, Iowa State, and Kansas all set to travel to the Fertitta Center. So that's another notable aspect of the matrix. And then the league's first-year head coaches will all face off. So Arizona State doubles up with Kansas State and Cincinnati, so and vice versa. So basically all 3 of these teams have home and homes with one another, so all 3 of these coaches get one another. Anything, Taman, stand out to you about the matrix?
Yeah, I can't wait for the Arizona-Texas Tech game because if we recall last year, Arizona was undefeated. Texas Tech got the dub. I think that's a game to watch. I know, obviously, there's different rosters. I get that. But just from a notion of you beat us last year, you ruined our streak. Is there going to be some revenge factors there? I could see that totally happening. And, I mean, you mentioned Houston. Their at-home schedule is rough.
But at least they don't have those teams on the road, right? They don't travel to Allen Fieldhouse.
Right. No,
they get BYU at home.
Yeah, to have those games at home is definitely a plus, but it's still rough.
Yeah, right. You're right. Tough opponents. Totally.
Yeah. You're playing some tough opponents, and you know, Houston obviously plays very well at the Fertitta Center, but if can Iowa State, can Kansas, can they go in there and steal one? You know, what does that do to Houston? What does that do to Kelvin Sampson? Kelvin Sampson will have his team ready. I don't doubt that, but that could be a big opportunity for a team like Iowa State, like BYU, like Kansas to get a huge road win.
Yeah. Also notable, Utah finished last of the conference last year, 2-16 at Big 12 play. Their road-only opponents include Arizona, Houston, Iowa State, UCF, and TCU, all tournament teams. So their road-only opponents are all tournament teams from last year, including Arizona, who went to the Final Four, Houston, who went to the Sweet 16, Iowa State, who went to the Sweet 16, UCF, and TCU. And Utah returns just one player from last year heading into the 2026-2027 season. So could be a rough year, too, for Alex Jetson as he tries to get his program off the ground. On the women's side, the first thing you wanted to look for was Iowa State and Oklahoma State. And, of course, they will play 2 games against each other this season, a home and home, if you will. So Audie Crooks will get an opportunity to go back to Ames this year. That was probably the first thing that I looked for. And then Baylor and TCU have a home and home, which is must-have. Also, Baylor and Texas Tech have a home and home.
Yeah, to your first point, that Audie Crooks returning back to Iowa State, that to Ames, that's going to be, must-see TV, of course. TCU obviously been dominating the conference. Nikki Collin at Baylor, she wants to get there and be on top with her squad. These are some good matchups here. I want to ask you this only because I know this team doesn't have high expectations, particularly like TCU or Baylor does. But remember, Kansas State played really well in the Big 12 women's basketball tournament just this past season. Is there a path there for Mitty's team?
Yeah.
To be in to at least have an expectation like a TCU or Baylor. I don't think they'll be that, or even Krista Gerlich's Texas Tech team. Remember, they started 17-0.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, K-State under Jeff Mittie has been very good and
Right.
consistent. Last year seemed like the outlier more than anything, and they dealt with injuries. And, they also 2 years ago had a really veteran group. So, I mean, they had to replace a really good, experienced veteran group. And then they dealt with a ton of injuries this year. So, yeah, I absolutely think they could be towards the top of the Big 12 again next year because they should be. Last year seemed to be the anomaly more than anything else.
Yeah, and their run in the Big 12 tournament proved it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Texas Tech? I mean, Krista Gerlich, they were undefeated. I believe they started 19-0. I said 17-0. I believe they started 19-0. Is there a path for Texas Tech?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's no secret that Texas Tech is spending money, and that's not to single out Texas Tech. That's not to single out Texas Tech because teams that want to win in any sport in college sports needs to spend money. If you're not going to spend money on your roster in any sport, you're probably not going to win at the highest level in most sports right now. So, yeah, I mean, I think certainly with where they are right now financially and the ability to then go out and use that in the marketplace to bring in really high-level talent and then Krista Gerlich's ability as a coach, yeah, I think we should absolutely expect them to be right back where they were this past year. The last thing I'll say on the basketball matrix is Arizona and BYU on the men's side. They play a home and home because, of course, they do. There's a great rivalry brewing between those two programs and has been for years. But they could actually play for a third time because both teams are playing in the Maui Invitational this year. So we could have 3 Arizona and BYU matchups this season.
Let me ask you one last question on the men's side. Jarrett Calhoun, Randy Bennett, and Casey Alexander, who based
Jared
on
Calhoun.
Did I say Jim Calhoun?
No. I'm giving you my answer to the question before you answer.
Fair enough.
ask the
I
question.
thought I messed up on a name.
No, not at all. You said Jared Calhoun.
Okay, yeah.
And you're right.
Most successful?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be, to me, it's between Arizona State and Cincinnati, but I just feel like the roster that Cincinnati has built, the juice that Jared Calhoun has right now, like that, he has the biggest opportunity to have the quickest turnaround, I think.
Sure.
I think it'll be a little bit slower for Randy Bennett and Casey Alexander at K-State and Arizona State. All right, Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. We have our consensus series coming up next. James and I are going through the Big 12 16-1, counting up, and coming up with our own consensus here for the show on the rankings preseason-wise. We have our own lists that we come together for a consensus. Yesterday, we reached a consensus on Cincinnati at 16, and since we both had Iowa State at either 16 or 15, we've got Iowa State at 15 today, and we'll go over how we came to that consensus coming up in a few minutes. But West Virginia and Troy later on this afternoon, 1 o'clock Central. They will start out the College World Series. It is the first game of the College World Series. And last night, Steve Sabins met with the media and said some really interesting things, including from a technological standpoint, where West Virginia is right now in terms of the biomechanics of the baseball department.
Reality is that I'm a baseball coach and we build rosters and we work to get players better, but I'm not a biomechanist and I don't know how human movement actually works. And so we went and we were able to hire a PhD in human movement, a full-time biomechanist who now also teaches a class in the School of Sports Science. So the School of Sports Science had this huge part to basically say we want to partner with WVU and we want to partner with the baseball program and we want to create experiential learning opportunities for students. And so people way smarter than me basically got together and said, one of those things I talk about, everybody being all in, you got everybody all in on our program. And so we went and hired the head biomechanist from Tread Athletics, which is a world-renowned lab. So she was servicing probably 3,000 or 4,000 different athletes, working with all these coaches, doing remote training, all this stuff. And she was responsible for creating reports and making all this information actionable. And the sales pitch was like, well, you want to work with 35 athletes and teach a class and be a professor versus and be part of a team and make a run to Omaha? Or would you like to service 4,000 athletes and never see any of them and not really work with them face to face? So for her name's Courtney Simkowick, it was kind of a no-brainer. She's like, I want to be part of a team, and I want to win, and I want to be in the dugout, and I want to make a difference. And so that's probably the biggest separator. And I don't mind sitting here and talking about it, because it's one of those things, like, you can have the roadmap of being good, but actually implementing that process of what we've done is essentially impossible. And she's a unicorn, right? A PhD in biomechanist. That's a baseball rat that wants to be in a dugout and be at practice all day and grind. And, you know, like those things aren't, you can't just go create that person or that system.
Steve Saban's on the incredible hire that they made from the biomechanist, I'm not even sure how to say it, aspect of their department. Look, innovation is all around us, and especially in college sports, you know, there's it's funny because as much BS as there is in college sports right now, and we're obviously knee deep in so much of it, it's easy to get, you know, disenchanted with the college sports overall. And then you hear stuff like this, you're like, man, that is profound. Like, that is so cool. Like, they're at the cutting edge from a technological standpoint, and like the things you can do to mix sports and the academics in the university. Like, what an incredible example this is of, let's help out one of our sports departments, or one of our prized programs in baseball, while also making our university more attractive to potential students because of this department we've now opened. It's incredible. It's transcendent. It's really cool, and it's even cooler that Steve Saban was so open in talking about it.
You know, whenever a team wins a championship, they thank a lot of people. And there's a lot of people behind the scenes. Like, we as fans, we only think about the athletes on what the product we saw on the
coaches
field.
Or the administrators or
right.
whatever.
This is a perfect example. I'm like you, a biomechanist or biomechanics, whatever it is, I couldn't tell you anything about it. But from what Steve Saban's described it as, I mean, we always talk about how in sports it's a physical game, it's a mental game. But you know what? It's also a scientific game.
Yes.
And now you have a coach who wants to, or administrator who wants to not only use her expertise in biomechanics, but also like utilize it for winning. And she's a baseball rat, and she wants to be in the dugout, and she wants to be with the players and utilize her expertise to help win. I think that's remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool. And again, as we focus so much on sort of the negative side of college sports, it's really important to point out some of these incredible stories because of, again, how they transcend sports and what they mean for academia and the university as well. It's really, really cool. And, you know, I mean, look, it's not everything. You know, I think people get these two things sort of confused of like, oh, now it's letting science play baseball games. No. It's like we've always, as human beings, tried to investigate how to make things more efficient and make things better. I mean, over the course of all of human history. And so, like, if you can find ways to get advantages, especially when it comes to the science of body movement, because baseball in particular is about specific movements and repeating those very specific movements every single time in the same way, feels like it's a home run, excuse the pun, when it comes to, you know, bringing this, investigate it for your baseball team, and it's obviously paid dividends. Here's what Steve Saban said yesterday about, you know, taking the necessary steps, the linear steps to get to West Virginia to the World Series.
I don't know if you can ever say you paid your dues, because there's a lot of things that have to go your way and a lot of blessings that have to shake out for you to end up here. There's great teams and there's incredible coaches and seasons that have been put together at the highest level where people don't end up sitting in this chair right now. It's certainly been a build. I could give you the whole recruiting pitch that I've been selling kids on for 11 straight years, but in 2017 we cracked through to the regional for the first time in 21 years. And then in 2019, we hosted a regional for the first time in 65 years. And I think that kind of put our program on the map nationally to some extent. And then now we've been to 4 consecutive NCAA tournaments, 3 consecutive super regionals, and now in Omaha. I would say it's probably unusual that the growth is this linear, meaning regional super get defeated by the national champs, and then Omaha, and you mix in 2 Big 12 titles in that. So it really has been more of this line, where I don't think that's always the case. I'm certainly fired up that it has been the case for the Mountaineers, but it's not surprising. We've mixed in first rounders and incredible staff members and auxiliary staff members, and then when you have an administration that basically refuses to put a ceiling on what this program can be, great things can happen. And so that's I'm just so excited that the work and the commitment level has basically directly been associated with us playing at a higher level each year. So just thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, great answer again there from Steve Sabins. And, I think what's important to point out about that is they've built a legitimate powerhouse program here. This is not a, one-off, one-and-done, lightning in a bottle type run for West Virginia. And we know that. They've made 3 trips now consecutively to these super regionals. It goes from Randy Mazey, who was really at the start of this thing, the coach at West Virginia, to build it to the point where he hands it off to Steve Sabins, and now you can take it off and run. But, the idea here of this linear path versus, just a spark, that's what sustainable programs do is, look, you might have, greater success and not in order necessarily. Some of that does come out to luck. But I think ultimately what this shows is, West Virginia's not just building something to be good for a few years. They're building something to be good for the long haul and to become, one of the perennial contenders in college baseball.
West Virginia is a baseball school. I mean, not to say that it isn't a football school or a basketball school, but they want to be a powerhouse in baseball, and they have done the necessary steps to do that. Steve Sabins, in that clip, he talks about, he's not reflecting really on what the past was, right? He knows that they went to back-to-back super regionals and then to go to this one a third time and now to advance into the World Series. He doesn't want to just, be content. He wants to keep growing and get better, and now they're competing for a championship.
In terms of the game today, West Virginia takes on Troy. For Troy, they're obviously no pushover. They're here for a reason. They were a team that was pretty good last year. They were ranked in the top 25 last season most of the year, but then kind of had a bad end of the year and missed out on the NCAA tournament. But they have been on a mission this year. Jimmy Janicki is their stud. He's a sophomore catcher, and he was named the 2026 Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year. He's a top prospect for the 2027 draft. He's a catcher. So both catchers in this series or in this game today are elite MLB prospects. But the crazy story is the story of Jabe Ruth. Jabe Boroff, okay? They're calling him Jabe Ruth, Taman. He's basically had every big hit this postseason. The dude had 10, 11, 12 hits the entire season. He has 6 home runs in the postseason so far. He has driven in 18. He's 18 RBIs and 6 home runs after having a season in which he had 11 total hits. So he is on one right now. That's why they're calling him Jabe Ruth. They also, they've got Ben Stubbs on the mound. He's a top-level pitcher. Now, look, ultimately, Troy can mash. They've got a good lineup. I think pitching is definitely not a strength of theirs. I think they were 100 in ERA and team ERA. And that on the West Virginia side of the bracket, Ole Miss and North Carolina, as well as West Virginia, are all top-level pitching staffs. So, that could be the one bugaboo in this for Troy. But, they're no pushover. They could certainly win this game and make a push into the postseason. Now, I see West Virginia winning this game, and then I think they set up a really awesome matchup with Ole Miss. And for me, the X factor for West Virginia in this thing is Armani Guzman, who's, his speed, if he gets to the base paths, forget about it, because he just puts a pressure on your defense in ways that a lot of other players can't. The only issue that Guzman has is when he can't get on base, because then he can't use his speed. But when he gets on base, it's kind of over for everybody else.
Entering this World Series, he has 38 stolen bases.
Yeah,
he's incredible. But West Virginia's pitching, Chance and Cole, Maxiell, they're going to be a problem. I agree with you. I don't think Troy's going to win this, but you talked about Jabe Ruth or Jay Boroff, Jabe Ruth. He's batting over 500. up to this point leading into this World Series. Over to 500.
Again, he had 11 total hits in the season.
Yeah, he's insanely good.
It's one of the craziest stories ever. And hopefully that story ends against West Virginia this afternoon. We shall see, especially with, as you mentioned, Yell or Cole, whoever they go with. And then, Montez is their third starter. This guy was pretty consistent throughout the year, but he's become way more consistent during postseason play. It's Big 12 today. Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. On the way next, it's the consensus. We came to a consensus yesterday at Cincinnati at 16 preseason. Now Iowa State at 15. We explain the rationale there. That's next. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Here comes the TCU pressure. Deal. Picked off. That will do it. Nandy Obi-Izor seals the rivalry win for the Horned Frogs.
And first and goal, 8 seconds to go. That's knocked up. That's picked off. Obi-Izor takes it away for TCU. And they stand at the goal line as the half expires.
Earl under pressure. Sack wrapped up and brought down. Andy Obi-Izor, the sack for TCU.
That was Bain, right? That was Bain. Tonight's theme.
Oh, big hit. Obi-Izor in the backfield.
Lift him up, form tackle, throw him down. My God. That is a tackle if I've ever seen one. Boom. Good Lord. Side of Lopez. And no running room. This defense, you keep contained, not fooled at all. Finish at the end of the year where no one feels like you have to play for.
What do you have inside of you? Is Pryor on the run? Can't get outside. Obi-Izor spun him down. If he can correct on a 3rd and 11. He steps up. In some trouble and he's swung down. Obi-Izor with the sack.
All right, let's hit the consensus. Remember, there is no off and off season. There is only research, and that has been our endeavor throughout this off season. We've ranked the top 5 newcomers at every position. We ranked the top 5 players at every position. We did the road to Arlington, going through each and every of the 16 teams in the Big 12 and their path in road to Arlington, answering important questions. And now we've hit the consensus. James and I individually ranked every team in the Big 12, 1 through 16 in football. And we are going to individually, and we are going to come to a consensus 1 through 16. I had Iowa State 16. He had Cincinnati. I had Cincinnati 15. James had Cincinnati. We came to the consensus yesterday, though, for Cincinnati at 16 and Iowa State at 15. And the reason for that is as follows. But one thing is obvious based on James and my own work on this. These are clearly the 2 worst teams preseason-wise in the Big 12. I mean, they both, the commonality amongst them, T-Chains, is that they both have a lot of turnover on their rosters. I mean, the case of the Cincinnati head coach is back, but he might be in his final season. He brings in, new coordinators on both offense and defense. I would assume he's going to be calling plays, but you've got a brand new DC in Nate Woody, and I like the hire, but it's a departure, pretty significant departure from the type of defense you had been running. And it's similar to Iowa State. I mean, they're both going from the same defensive schemes, the 3-3-5, the rush 3, drop 8. In fact, Cincinnati's former defensive coordinator, Tyson Veit, was the former secondaries coach with Iowa State. So very much connected in that way. And both Iowa State and Cincinnati are now going to more of that traditional 3-4 defense and abandoning that 3-3-5 as, but do they have the right personnel to run those more traditional defenses? That's a big question mark around both of those 2 teams. Cincinnati has a strong offensive line. That was one of the reasons I put them ahead of Iowa State and all the unknowns that Iowa State has on their roster. But Cincinnati lost a ton of top-level talent to the NFL draft. Cyrus Allen, Golday, Gavin Gearhart, Joe Royer, all gone. Dante Corleone undrafted. Jeff Caldwell undrafted, but both, trying to get on NFL rosters, all gone. So Iowa State has an entirely new roster, entirely new staff. I mean, it is a brand spanking new team, staff, and everything. And they overhauled their roster with players from the group of 5, group of 6. So there's a lot of unproven players at this level. Not to say that they can't do it, but just unproven at this level. And I'd imagine some of these players will emerge, but it's a huge, huge question mark. And for Iowa State, I mean, the one thing, and this is where we reach consensus on Iowa State at 15, is Jimmy Rogers just did this. I mean, year 1 at Washington State, an entirely new roster. He replenishes the roster with new players and goes 6-6. But that's at Washington State, which is, at this point, at the group of 5 level. It's much harder to do this immediately in the Big 12 with how good Big 12 teams are. But the consensus was reached on Cincinnati at 16. James made the argument, and I tend to agree with him, that I would take Jimmy Rogers right now over Scott Satterfield. So the coaching part of this, for me, is a huge reason for why we reached consensus on Cincinnati at 16. Also, James pointed this out. It's worth mentioning. Cincinnati is 6-8 at home since joining the Big 12, and that would mean that under Scott Satterfield, they're 6-8 at home in Big 12 play. Now, granted, they were 0-4 at home in 2023 in that first year, so they've been better at home last 2 years than they were their first year, but still 6-8 at home is glaring when it comes to why we put Cincinnati at 16.
Yeah, I mean, look, Cincinnati started, 7-1 last season?
Yep.
And then they didn't win in November at all. They had a 6-8 home record last season. They're dealing with a total roster overhaul. And listen, for the fans who aren't like diehards, who are more like casuals, just doesn't pay attention to it, Cincinnati starts off with a bad record. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Satterfield. This just doesn't look like a recipe for success for Cincinnati, and it could go downhill really quickly as compared to West Virginia, or excuse me, I keep saying West Virginia, to Iowa State. Compared to them, yes, they're starting anew. Yes, they have a huge a roster, overhaul as well. But there's with the coach, they're having a coaching overhaul too. They're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
They're starting
Total reboot.
everything. Yeah. Whereas I understand Cincinnati is kind of doing the same thing, but I just think that there's going to be more pressure on Cincinnati compared to that there would be for Iowa State.
No, there's virtually no pressure on Iowa State.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
It's year one for Jimmy Rogers. They lost the entire roster. They lost their coach. Like, the expectations for Iowa State are to be the worst team in the Big 12. And I think Iowa State fans, if they're reasonable, have those same expectations. Cincinnati has expectations of being a bowl team, which, to your point, probably are far-fetched given the composition of the roster. Both of these teams are counting on, former G5 quarterbacks with high interception numbers, which is a recipe for disaster. Here's what new Iowa State head coach Jimmy Rogers, did he tell us this, or was this something he just said publicly about the state of their roster?
This was a public statement.
So here's what Jimmy Rogers said about the state of their roster.
I got hired to do a job. I'm not going to change my standard of what I expect our program to do based off of the situation that I chose to be a part of. Mm-hmm. Nobody should feel bad for us. It's our job to get the team ready to play. Yeah, does it take boldness? It takes clear vision and a belief that you can do it. I have that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have taken the job. I'm excited about what we can do. I'm excited about the roster that we put together. It is about making players believe that they're better than what they actually are. It's about making a staff believe in their players and seeing them as what they can become rather than what they are at the current moment. And it's hammering a consistent message home that becomes so redundant that they don't know anything else. And I think if you do it that way and you're genuine about your approach, you tell them the truth, you hold them accountable, you love them as if they're yours, you can have success.
It sounds a lot, if I'm being honest, like Kenny Dillingham. There's just a lot of that in this in terms of just like it feels simple because it is. And I think sometimes, coaches, there's so much going on that you forget to keep the main thing. And in this case, it's obvious how building a culture in 2026 is a little bit different than how it was previously. But I love Jimmy Rogers. Like, when we first had him on, we were talking to him about the positives of going 6-6 year one at Washington State. Like, wow, you got to a bowl game and he was like super disappointed in that. Like, no, we felt like we lost some games we should have won, and it was like, whoa. His expectations are much higher than anybody else's all the time.
I love his confidence, and to your point, very similar to Kenny Dillingham, he doesn't believe in like underselling his team. Like he's very. I believe he believes what he says.
Yes,
where
he's extremely genuine.
Exactly, and he has an expectation for his team. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks, that this is the goals that we're going to set. We're going to be a winning football team. And, I know that they have a huge mountain to climb, but I definitely think that I wouldn't be surprised if they're better than what we think.
It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. Let's find out about that from Travis Hines of the Ames Tribune. It's Big 12 today. Taman Turner, T-Chains, in today for James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
1 for 6 on 3rd down, but Tony's scrambling and he gets dropped in the backfield. Nigel Lee Kelly.
Sets up first down they've got for Cincinnati from the 8. Quarterback draw with Sorsby, and he gets swallowed up immediately. Nigel Lee Kelly atones for Russell, but he stays on side, right? He's not jumping off side. He's doing a good job in the passing game. Down, Andrew Paul on his first carry. Swallowed at the line of scrimmage.
But a good job up front, too, beating the block. 55, John Walker.
Editor.
Oh, look out. Kelly made the hit. The ball comes loose. Rodney Laura has it, and the officials say he's also got a touchdown.
Talked about him before. I mean, he's a problem. He's just a problem waiting to happen. Steps up. And scooped up. It's going to be a quick 6.
To make plays. Here's Kelly Lawson right in the middle. He bluffs up and then drops back. So that when the defensive end knocks that ball out of the quarterback's hands, it's almost like a blocked kick.
This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. We are doing the consensus now. James and I, each individually, have come up with our top 16, working our way up, and then coming up with consensus. I had Iowa State at 16. James had Cincinnati. We reached consensus on Cincinnati at 16, and then Iowa State at 15. Since I had Iowa State at 16, and James had him at 15. Travis Hines from the Ames Tribune or the Des Moines Register joining us here on Big 12 Radio. How are you, Travis?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Doing very well, thank you. Where should Iowa State be in the hierarchy of the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys are probably on it. It's 15th or 16th, and I think so much of it has to do with that they're a mystery, right? Like, we don't know what this team is going to look like from the coaching staff on down to the last scholarship player, because there's just been so much turnover since Matt Campbell's departure in December. And I think the reality of the situation Iowa State finds itself in is that you have a brand new roster, mostly of guys that were previously from lower levels, as far down as Division II. And when you look at the rest of the Big 12, that's not how most of those rosters are comprised. And so if Iowa State is going to overperform where it is on paper, a lot is going to have to come together, from the initial evaluation of these guys to their development from since they got on campus in the winter, to being able to out-execute teams, because they're probably not going to be able to out-talent many, if any, Big 12 teams on their schedule this year. And I think that's the challenge facing them of, trying not to finish 15th or 16th in the league this year.
Travis, Jimmy Rogers says that despite the challenges, he's as excited about his roster. What on the roster should we really be looking forward to? What should we be excited about as fans?
I think they're pretty high on their quarterback. Jalen Raynor came from Arkansas State, along with his quarterback coach and OC, Keith Heckendorf, who's now Iowa State's quarterback's coach. And he's a 3-year starter at Arkansas State, kind of a dual threat quarterback that can make people miss. Iowa State played him twice, once in Ames and once down in Jonesboro last fall. A talented, potentially electric player. And I think, if Iowa State's offense is going to have success, I think Raynor is going to have to be a huge part of it, both in the pass game, maybe not exclusively in the run game, but at least being a run threat or a scramble to throw threat. And I think that's the area where the offense is probably going to need to overperform, is at the quarterback position. And I think defensively, they talk a lot about wanting to be aggressive and wanting to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback and really disrupt offenses. And so, the best version of that defense, I think, is one that flies around and is disruptive, which can be fun to watch. But, there is a flip side to that, is if you're not able to get home, or if you're not able to really disrupt the offense, that leaves you susceptible to big plays potentially.
Talk with Travis Hines here. Travis, who do you think will end up being the best players in the team this year?
I think they better hope it's Jalen Raynor. If it's not, I think they've got issues across that offense, because you look at the skill position players, there's just not a lot of track record there. Even a guy like Evan Boyd, who they're high on from Michigan State, didn't have a huge role for the Spartans last year. So there's just not a lot of experience or reps at the skill position players. Running back is going to be by committee. Their starter might be Aiden Flora, who was a great punt returner for Iowa State last year, but was probably somewhere 4th or 5th string as a running back. So if Raynor isn't, above average or among the Big 12's, top tier of quarterbacks, I think they're gonna struggle offensively. I think, because there's just not a lot of dynamic players across the board there.
Yeah.
Travis, you mentioned Jalen Raynor quite a few times, and what Iowa State needs to have some type of success. Let me ask you this question. When we talk about this roster overhaul, what grade would you give Jimmy Rogers for this roster overhaul?
It's a great question, and I think there's 2 ways you can answer it. One would be holistically, what does the roster look like relative to the rest of the Big 12? And that's probably not a great grade, right? Because of everything I just mentioned, there's Division II players, FCS players, a lot of Group of 5 players. The talent-wise, relative to the rest of the Big 12, is probably something like a D, right? But I think when you look at the situation he inherited where so many guys left when Campbell left, and Iowa State's, not bad NIL situation, but probably average at best. I think with the scope and scale of what they had to do to assemble a roster to compete this fall, they did very well, probably like a B+. They got more Power 4 players than I would have guessed, a real handful of them, and I think guys that they're excited about that project from the lower levels, and to go out and have to get 80 players with an NIL budget that's probably middle of the pack at best, I think they did pretty well, B+, because, the deck was so stacked against them with the situation that they had in December and just the reality of the transfer portal and NIL era.
Yeah. How confident are you in Jimmy Rogers?
I have no idea. I mean, I think, we haven't seen him. He inherited one of the best FCS programs in the country at South Dakota State, and made the most of it, won a national title. And then I think with the roster overhaul he had at Washington State, which was very similar to the one that he had here at Ames this winter, I think, to get them to a bowl game was a big accomplishment. But, that's a 3-year track record, and it's kind of a tough one to parse, right? Because you walk into a great job at South Dakota State, and then you walk into a really funky job at Washington State in that reconstituted Pac-12 and a complete roster overhaul. There's just not a lot of track record there. Excuse me, but I do think he's projecting confidence, and the way that they've, structured their winter workouts, their spring workouts, and now getting into the summer, I think there's reason for hope. And like the one thing that would be a big red flag, I think, for not being able to, watch a Jimmy Rogers Iowa State team take a snap yet, a big red flag would be like already making excuses, right? About trying to temper expectations and not, trying, even if it is in vain, to pick up where Campbell left off. And I think Rogers has been really good about rejecting any sort of low expectations. Like I talked to him a couple of weeks ago while they were out on their, tour of the state, meeting Iowa State fans all across Iowa. And he said the consistent message from Iowa State fans was kind of low expectations of understanding the challenge that they inherited. And he just said like he would flat out not accept that. He would reject that. And I think, whatever happens this fall, I think that's the attitude and approach that you have to have. And I think they've had that from Rogers on down.
Travis, Ari and James came up with the consensus that this is the 15th ranked team in the Big 12. Is that too high, too low, or is that just about right?
I think it's just about right. I wouldn't argue with 16 either. I mean, I think, when you look at Las Vegas, although I guess in this conference betting is you probably shouldn't talk too much about it right now. But I think like they're 10,000 to 1 or something like that to win the league, like right ahead of, I think, Cincinnati. So like this is not a team that anyone is going to expect to push for a conference title. And, again, this is the league that just a couple of years ago, Arizona State won from being projected from the bottom of the league. So you don't want to rule anything out. But again, just from a talent perspective, this roster does not measure up, certainly with the top third of the league, and it probably doesn't with the middle of the league, just from an on-paper talent perspective. And I think when you're looking at this in the preseason and the offseason, that's really all we've got to go on. And so I think, 15th or 16th is probably where they should project. And if they're going to overperform that, it's going to have to be where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? Where the execution is elite, where the discipline is elite, where the play calling is elite. Like they are going to have a lot of hurdles to clear, which are certainly possible, but there are a lot of them, and some of them are pretty tall.
Yeah, and where are the fans in all this? I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some level of understanding that this is definitely a rebuild year, and that if there is success, it would be kind of unknown that, preseason-wise.
I think people right now in June have pretty tempered expectations, but I think my experience usually is it's easy to have low or high expectations depending on the situation in the summer. And if you get into September and October and the losses mount up, I think frustration will also mount. But I do think intellectually Iowa State fans have a pretty good understanding of how difficult this is going to be. I mean, 80 new guys, they saw what this program was for a long time before Matt Campbell got here. And I think they understand that you're probably not going to just be able to continue off that 10-year run of success. that there's going to have to be a recalibration and a reset where I think expectations are going to be pretty manageable this year. But Iowa State fans, my understanding of them is that they're going to want to see a trajectory of growth, right? Where you can get into year 2 and year 3 and you're back to competing near the top of the league, because after being able to do that for the last, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, that's tough to give up. Once you have a taste of that level of success where you're going to winning a Fiesta Bowl, where you go to 2 Big 12 title games, you don't want to go back to what this was,
right,
in the 80s and 90s. So I think there is going to be immediate manageable expectations, but then there is going to be some urgency to show a path back toward contention, by year 2, 3, 4.
Travis, what is the best case scenario for this Iowa State team this season?
I think a bowl game. I mean, I think anything like 6 wins or more, I think you're playing with house money. Again, sorry for the gambling reference there. But to get to 6 wins, and their schedule is manageable, and I think that is what is giving a lot of Iowa State fans, maybe a little boost of hope, is that even if this isn't a powerhouse roster, even if this is a rebuilding situation, is that you do have a schedule that at least you can map out a path to 6 or 7 wins. And I think if they're able to do that, if they're able to win close games, if they're able to have, a ball control offense that takes care of the ball, like there is a path to that. And I think that is a reasonable expectation or a reasonable hope for Iowa State fans and for this Iowa State team.
Well said. Travis Hines, Des Moines Register, you're the best, buddy. Thank you as always for your time.
Yep, all right, take care, guys.
Travis Hines joining us, breaking down his thoughts on Iowa State, on our consensus with the Big 12 preseason. Cincinnati at 16, Iowa State at 15, and we will pick up number 14 on Monday as we work our way through the consensus top 16 in the Big 12. We will get you right up until the start of Big 12 Media Days, which is just a few weeks away. Crazy to think about.
Right around the corner.
This series will go all the way up until we get to 1 before the weekend of July 4th, and the next week we'll be at Media Days. So football season is upon us. But you wouldn't even know that it was the off season if you followed this show, because we have been tracking the rosters, movement, etc., with different series throughout the entire off season. All right. There's been a lot of takes on Brendan Sorsby. A lot of them.
Really?
On the way next, we get to some of the worst. Some of the takes, the opinions that have absolutely jumped the shark, that are uninformed, that are downright stupid.
That should be fun.
We address the Brendan Sorsby worst takes next. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios.
Wickman look in that direction, and it's picked off. UCF with the interception. It's Philip Dunham out past the 45.
UCF shows pressure. Down goes Martin in the backfield. Philip Dunham at the tackle from the safety spot.
Blitz coming by UCF. Wickman has to get rid of it. Throws a pick. Another pick. And another pick six. It's Philip Dunham doing it.
To get to about the 6-yard line to extend the drive, and they cannot. Philip Dunham, who has a sack and now a pass breakup, came to play this afternoon.
Wickman throwing on second down, looking for Thomas. He's picked off. It's Dunham again.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo. Cheers to all you Modelo full-time fans, the ones who join us each and every day here on Big 12 Radio, 7 to 10 a.m. Central each and every weekday morning, 8 to 11 Eastern Time. The show then replays immediately after, and then on today's show, or on today, later on today, on TuneIn, Big 12 Radio on TuneIn, you get the Road to Arlington, Colorado. If you missed our full breakdown of Colorado football and the Road to Arlington, you can catch it live at 1 o'clock today. That follows the replay. Then at 2 o'clock Central, it's the Road to Arlington, West Virginia. So another team you may have missed in our Road to Arlington series, the Deep Dive. And then at 3 o'clock, it's the consensus, as we're looking at the consensus between Cincinnati and Iowa State, getting to Cincinnati and Iowa State, 16 and 15 in the Big 12. 14 will be on Monday. It's Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. Go ahead.
I have to apologize. I don't know what my obsession with West Virginia has been because I put West Virginia.
Yeah, you for some reason you keep thinking Cincinnati is West Virginia.
Yeah.
They are in fact two different places.
Yeah.
One's a state, one's a city. But I looked and it said the consensus West Virginia. I'm like, I don't think we've done that one yet. I don't know how it would replay when we haven't even done it yet.
Yeah, I think I need to work on my geography skills,
Mike Asti, who's the managing editor at WV Sports Now, joins us coming up in about 15 minutes to talk about the start of Omaha with the College World Series and West Virginia taking on Troy later on this afternoon. But there's been so much noise with the Brennan Sorsby saga, like just an insane amount of takes and articles, and it is jumped the shark officially. And so I figured, let's find the craziest, most outlandish, most absurd, most ridiculous, most jumped the shark takes on Brendan Sorsby across the college sports and media landscape. All right, so Paul Feinbaum, the water carrier for the SEC, said, quote, college sports is in trouble right now. Way to go on a limb there, Paul.
What gave that away?
Yeah. And then he mentioned, of course, Texas Tech and booster Cody Campbell specifically. Quote, said, quote, the problem with Texas Tech is that their biggest benefactor is Cody Campbell. He's a billionaire, and he's the one speaking and screaming the loudest. He sat right behind Ted Cruz the other day at the Senate hearing. Okay, so the first part of the statement was, well, both parts are true, but what he did in combining those two statements together is he drew a connection there between Campbell and Ted Cruz. So he pivoted from a player betting on sports to a billionaire sat near a senator in one breath. I mean, it's a masterclass in, creeping two things together and trying to conflate two things. I mean, the seating chart at a Senate hearing is now evidence of institutional corruption. And not only that, but Feinbaum, if we're going to be honest about institutional corruption, I don't know, how about the fact that Nick Saban is still employed by both ESPN and Alabama?
Not going to talk about that.
Yeah, and how much Saban then goes on the record on the same platform you're on, ESPN, and talks so glowingly about Alabama and how outrageous it was they left out of the playoff and on and on and on. Isn't that institutional corruption? It's controlling the narrative. So it's sort of absurd for Paul Feinbaum to be connecting those two things as if oh, see, look, Cody Campbell is behind the scenes pushing all of the buttons to make everything happening, when that's literally happening with the school that you constantly root for and go to bat for on your own network.
Awkward.
All right, Scott Van Pelt. Oh, SVP.
I love SVP.
I love SVP. And who doesn't? Say it ain't so, SVP. But he had a really bad take on Twitter.
Uh-oh.
He said, quote, there really aren't any rules. You just go to court. If it fails, go to court again until a judge says you're all set. That's not what happened here, SVP. That is not what happened here. And you do a ton of damage to the discourse at large when you ignore what actually happened here. And it sucks that it's SVP because he's usually a measured, credible voice. I mean, he literally has a segment every day called Bad Beats. It's one of the best segments in sports.
Can I play benefit of the doubt?
Sure.
Is it possible, just possible, that maybe he just was in the moment?
Well, I would say that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, he just kind of he knows that, but he just kind of got caught up in the moment and made a knee-jerk reaction of a tweet.
Yes, however, that doesn't change the fact that it does a lot of damage to the discourse. I mean, It's a catchy tweet that, people will retweet and favorite, and it misrepresents the legal process to a massive audience.
That's fair.
It misrepresents exactly what happened. And so now you have a massive audience that's like, oh, see, Texas Tech lost in court, and then they had to find another judge that would help them. No, that's not at all what happened. In fact, they had a Texas Tech alum judge who recused himself, and it was then transferred to a retired judge out of Tarrant County, not even close to Lubbock, hundreds of miles away. So, we can argue about hometown, and it still might be a little bit of a hometown piece, but that's the idea here that they went to court, failed, and then went to court again to get a judge that says they're all set is a total misrepresentation of exactly what happened. All right, Matt Hayes, senior national college football writer. If the NCAA can't stop it, the CFP should ban Texas Tech. He's not the only one I've heard that's had this opinion. So, I mean, we heard about Tech, the Big 12 trying to put some, potential sanctions on Texas Tech. They were supposed to have an executive session yesterday to discuss any penalties. Instead, it was met with resistance from the Attorney General of Texas, who basically threatened legal action from Texas Tech. And then, of course, Jeffrey Kessler, Sorsby's lawyer, who also responded to this. So imagine if the CFP leaves them out and there's any public discourse on them doing so. You think they're going to get sued as well for not allowing the compliance for tortious interference or not allowing the compliance of an injunction? So, I mean, just the legal grounds of this is ridiculous. Also, on top of that, I know people want to make Texas Tech a party to this lawsuit, but remember, they're not even officially a party to the lawsuit. So you're going to penalize a school that wasn't even involved specifically in the lawsuit itself?
I said earlier that this has all been about legality versus ethics. The notion that you can't legally punish Texas Tech. Legally, they have done nothing wrong. They hurt your feelings. And I know that might sound a little rough, but they hurt your feelings, and now you want something in return from it.
Well, you can't police ethics, is what you're saying.
Yes, correct, 100%.
As much as we try to with certain laws, you can't police ethics.
No.
And so I think people are not understanding that. Troy Dannon, the Nebraska athletic director, he really jumped the shark and actually may have put himself in legal trouble. With this under the same guys. Nebraska's Troy Dannon issued his own no scheduling memo internally at Nebraska, which I'm pretty sure if any of that came to bear, any of these games were canceled, then Texas Tech could very well sue Nebraska for tortious interference and other things as well. I'm not a lawyer again. Sometimes I like to play one on the radio. I'm sure there's other legal precedent that they could sue over. But, I mean, Troy Dannon, you may want to do that. You shouldn't, release a statement publicly saying you're going to do something that's illegal, as well as then release an internal memo saying you're going to do something that's illegal. Not a good move.
Yeah, from a legal standpoint, never write anything down, never say anything, never record anything. Just don't say anything. Listen, if it's not written down, you can't. It was never said.
So I mean, you're gift wrapping a lawsuit for Texas Tech if you do so. Or Jeffrey Kessler. So be my guest. Nebraska. Tom Mars has jumped the shark. Tom Mars is really interesting here because Tom Mars, like Jeffrey Kessler, has made a living out of suing the NCAA and winning on antitrust grounds. But he's gone to the other side here. He is completely against what is happening with Texas Tech and Sorsby. And there's a level of irony here because it's weird. It's feels like you should be on this side and you're on the other side. He said he called the ruling, quote, one of the most shocking decisions I've ever heard. And I mean, in a piece written by Barrett Sallee from CBS Sports, I mean, he's basically just completely outraged, and then he elicits quotes from Tom Mars for validation. Mars has also taken to Twitter to voice his opinion on this. He said, quote, in this article by Barrett Sallee, quote, in 40 years as a lawyer, I've never been as shocked and surprised by a court ruling, which is shocking because Tom Mars has built his entire practice dismantling the NCAA enforcement through the courts. He's personally argued for and won multiple precedent-bending rulings against the NCAA. Him being shocked that courts keep fighting against the NCAA is a little like Pete Rose being shocked someone bet on baseball. Like, what? You're shocked by this ruling when you've been against the NCAA on multiple rulings that have done the exact same thing that you argued against? How are you shocked by this? I wasn't shocked by this, and I'm not a lawyer. I called it.
You know what it is. I mean,
I'm not even a law degree, and I knew that the injunction would be granted. What are we talking about here, Tom?
I know we both know this, but he just flat out lied with a straight face. I mean, he doesn't believe what he just said.
And I'm trying to figure out why.
I don't know. But, like, we always talk about, like, gaslighting somebody.
Yeah, this is the definition of gaslighting.
In 40 years, I've never been as shocked. Yeah,
Tom,
sure.
First of all, you shouldn't have been shocked because you knew that this injunction was going to be granted because of all of the cases that you've argued against the NCAA. What are you talking about? All right, but the biggest one, and I think we've touched on this a little bit yesterday, but it just is worth mentioning again. This is the grand prize, the most shark jumped of all of the Brendan Sorsby takes. This one comes from Yahoo Sprint on June 9th. And, I mean, this being the one thing that completely opens the floodgates of the NCAA, I would argue that there are no floodgates. I would argue that there's, like, the water's just, like, it's a deluge. There's no gates. There have been no gates. Like, have you not been paying attention? Go back to the Tom Mars thing. Like, floodgates are now open. Where are the gates? Where have the gates been? The NCAA keeps taking L after L after L in court. The floodgates have been open. They've been wide open. The gates, the deluge of water knocked the gates off their hinges. They're gone. There's no gates. Water's just flowing in uncontrollably. And believing anything else is disingenuous to the situation at large.
So you know where my mind went when you said that? And I know this is going to sound bad, but doesn't mean to. Remember during Hurricane Katrina when the levees broke?
Yeah. That probably shouldn't go there.
The levees broke a long time ago.
Yeah, no, there's no
the water is free flowing.
Yeah, I mean, this didn't officially end anything for the NCAA. It officially served as another reminder that the NCAA has no ability to enforce its own rules, which it for 5 to 7 years that's been the case here. They've been locked in ongoing court battles, and they continually take losses. And that's, like, to your point, like, there's no floodgates, there's no levee, there's nothing stopping the flood from. It's a deluge. It is the definition of a deluge.
By the way, speaking of that, let's hear Charlie Baker's reaction to this ruling.
In some respects, it's kind of a new low with respect to our ability to enforce rules that are deemed by most people as pretty reasonable. And this one in particular is sort of an unbreakable one that's been around sports generally, in college and professional sports in particular, for probably, close to 60 or 70 years. And I think it illustrates maybe more than anything that's happened before that the folks in D.C. who've been talking about trying to create some sort of framework around rulemaking that involves the NCAA and college sports are heading down the right track. I mean, you've got Senator Cantwell, Democrat from state of Washington, who's been involved in these issues for years, and Senator Cruz out of Texas, Republican, who put together between them a bipartisan bill. You can see when you read it where they both gave to get something bigger. And that bill, for example, would have made it much harder for somebody to challenge a national rule like the rule that we have and that every other sports organization has about betting on your own team and betting on sports generally to stand up. And I think in some ways it's sort of a bit of a seminal moment for a lot of people.
All right, all I got out of that is that Charlie Baker needs the federal government to enforce his own laws.
Yeah, and
like, in other words, you don't have any power.
It's funny because it's like whether it's Mark Emmert or Charlie Baker, it's just the same song and dance with the NCAA. It really is. Like, I'm not that intelligent, Taman, And these are people involved in this that are extremely intelligent, very educated people that consistently say things that make it seem like they're not intelligent at all. And I don't understand why. Like, open up your door, walk outside, and see the world for what it is. Because the NCAA, at this point in time, continually is reactive. It has gotten them into this mess. It continues to get them into this mess, and it gets them further and further away from their ability to be authoritarian in any way. It really is astonishing how far behind the curve they've been at every single turn, and they continue to be that way. If you're Charlie Baker, the time is now to start talking about a CBA. I do not care that you don't want, and the member institutions don't want it. If this bill gets out of committee and gets out of the Senate, then maybe, and that's a big if, then maybe you could sit there and say this. But so far, we just had Ross Dellinger on the show who talked about 15 to 20 bills in the last 7 years, and only one has made it out of committee. And that means they've passed basically 2 steps of a 3-step process in one of the chambers. That being the hearing, committee, vote. Vote on the House floor. Then committee, hearing, committee, vote on the Senate floor, or vice versa in this case. So you're, at this point, through 2 of the 6 steps you need. And that's as far as you've made it in 7 years. You have to start thinking about reality here. The NCAA doesn't live in reality. They live in a la-la land. They live in the world they want to live in as opposed to the world that they need to be living in, which is the real world.
You have to take control. You can't just keep letting things happen and then wondering why it happens. It's because you're allowing it to happen. You're not doing anything about it.
You have no authority right now.
You brought up the point about a CBA. This ends that. If you don't want to go through this, CBA. You mentioned about how the member institutions don't want it. Okay, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care.
Well,
you're going to get it.
Look, it would be extremely complicated. It would take many years. It would take a lot. But it seems like the only path forward here. And, the NCAA just continues to sit on the sideline and see every aspect of its rule book broken down in a court of law because they had years in which they could have gotten in control of this and didn't. The state of California forced their hand to start paying athletes. The Supreme Court ruled that they were an antitrust, and the rest was history. And they just sat on the sidelines until this all happened, and they're still sitting on the sidelines. What are you doing? Mark Emmert, Charlie Baker, you're the same thing. It's the same playbook. Change the playbook. Live in reality. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. All right, on the way next, we're talking West Virginia in the College World Series with Mike Asti, managing editor at WV Sports Now. That's next. It's Big 12 Today.
Sideline, back shoulder, Virgil twist to grab it, and in a hurry, Texas Tech is right in front of Arizona State.
6 on the left-hand side, starting his 50th game this afternoon. Looking long, it's Virgil. He's got it inside the 15. He beat Henderson again.
To corral those defenders, they do a good job there.
Reverse, Virgil. Reverse. Virgil. Oh yeah. A hop, skip, and a jump touchdown.
Virgil's got the first down, still on his feet. And Virgil is going to take it inside the 35.
Goal. Morton with all kinds of time. Virgil caught. Reggie. Oh my goodness, what's happened to Virgil today?
Hammond, they throw it up top again. Now they're showing off. Touchdown, Reggie.
Big 12 today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. West Virginia and Troy today at 1 o'clock from TD Ameritrade Park in Omaha, Nebraska, the start of the College World Series. Joining us now to talk about it is Mike Asti, managing editor at WV Sports Now. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing well. And yeah, a big day to say the least for West Virginia fans, but just a cool event in general. It's kind of nice that West Virginia's emergence into the College World Series, but just everybody has kind of added even more intrigue and interest into this overall with the national phenomenon of country roads and all the networks getting involved. It's for those who don't follow the College World Series and college baseball as much as maybe the other sports, the College World Series is really, really unique and really, really cool.
Yeah. On that note, it sounds like everything I've heard from the folks that are there indicate that there's a ton of WVU fans there.
I am not there personally. I have a colleague who's there. I was telling you guys off the air, I'm probably going to go down if West Virginia does make the finals, so next weekend. But from what I've heard from colleagues and just people that I know that are fans, alums that I know that are fans that I know, it's nuts. It is basically West Virginia down there and a large contingent of Mountaineer Nation, whether it be at the bars, whether it be at the restaurants, obviously going to these games all over in Omaha, Nebraska. So when West Virginia has a team that's worthy and is really, really good and is certainly vying for a championship, the fan base really, really shows up, which again is part of the national phenomenon of this run. But yeah, it's not an easy trip from Morgantown, West Virginia, or as you know, a lot of West Virginia fans all over the country. It's a national brand wherever they are, but they made their way. They found a way.
Yeah. And Mike, we heard from Steve Sabins where he brought up the biomechanist they have on staff.
Yeah.
And what do you know about that? That hire and what it's meant for their program.
That has been a really, really underrated piece of the emergence of this program, to be honest. It's several years into this operation, but facility-wise, this program is right up there with any of the best in the country. This is a national championship level facility, and you mentioned the biochemistry. This is a program that really put an emphasis in building up the facility structure and what they could do for these players and a recruiting pitch even before the financial aspect and the advent of NIL. And it's done so much, guys. I can throw one name out there that loves it, that trains there, that goes there when he has time, that's in the region but not in West Virginia, and that is Paul Skeens. He's the ace for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He doesn't go over to the University of Pittsburgh in the offseason. He doesn't even always go to LSU or anywhere else in the country. He frequents WVU because of that biochemistry lab, for what they have going on there. He credits them. That's part of why he's come out to country roads before. Like, he's not a WVU product at all, of course, but he knows what's going on there, and he lets them work on him, and he goes there to check it out. He went there a couple years ago to check it out when he got to the Pirates, and he's continuously gone back since. It is a gigantic deal. It is a really, really big deal. It does a lot for pitchers, but of course the position players can be tracked as well. And Steve Sabins has even touched on through this run, they know so much. It's why they had a pitcher. It's become a folklore story that's going to get intensified if they win the national title. They had a pitcher pitch 130 pitches and then come out there the following day against Kentucky where they'd win the regional in a Game 7 aspect, and people nationally were saying, how could this is nuts, like this doesn't happen in the Major League Baseball level. It worked out for them. It was just a walk on that at bat, but how could you even do this? Is this right for the kid? And Saban said, we track everything. They know more whether a pitcher's ready than anybody in the country because of this lab. They are really confident in the work there, and it has been a big deal to where this program is today and from where it was since this got put together. Of course, you got to have the NIL funding to build the roster, and they do now, but that's been a really, really big part. That's why they've been competitive even before, say, the last couple of years where the national consciousness is aware. This has been a slow climb that Saban's also touched on. It's not necessarily really out of nowhere, even though this is West Virginia's first run to Omaha.
Mike, we know that West Virginia's pitching, led by Chanson Cole and Maxiell, are truly outstanding. But Troy does have this guy. You probably have heard of him, Jay Bruth, as they call him. He's batting over 500, hitting 6 home runs going into this postseason. How do Cole and Yale, how do they pitch against this guy?
So it's interesting because people may think, oh, this is a Big 12 contender. They won the regular season title a year ago. They've won regionals. They now have a super regional. This is a power program. We're talking about the biochemistry. Paul Skeens loves them. This is a lower level program. What's even been said, West Virginia, because of UCLA losing, has a quote-unquote easy path. I've seen some nationally say that if they win the national title, it'll be the easiest path in College World Series history to get it done. They can go a whole, it would have been 2 weeks before they have to face a power program. But Troy, as you mentioned, has a stud. They have power, they have pop, and they have more of it than, say, Cal Poly did, who they beat in the Super Regional. That's more of a small ball team. So I'd imagine West Virginia's going to try to pitch him carefully. But the way West Virginia works is they go at guys. They're going to try to throw the fastball. They're going to try to throw the flame-throwing stuff. They're going to try to get strikeouts on the board. This is also going to be a big deal in how West Virginia's defense shows up. The reason why they had to go to a decisive game against Kentucky, guys, they were in the losers bracket out of the regional, and it's because their defense was not sound. It's what Kentucky's head coach even said, that the path is there. He thinks West Virginia can at least get to the Final Four group, if not win the whole thing, unless their defense does not show up. They had 3 errors in some of those regional and super regional games. So the defense has to show up against a team that can score like this. Troy is hot, and they can score more than, say, Cal Poly did. But West Virginia has several batters that can do what the one on Troy mentioned. So even if Troy scores, it's always on the board. If you just look at the box scores from their recent games, that West Virginia wins these games 10-9, 9-8. I mean, these pitchers have performed, but it isn't like besides the Cal Poly series where they're really dominating anybody and they're pitching close to shutouts. Runs could be on the board and they could still win, but this puts a lot of pressure on the defense for sure, and it'll be interesting how quick of a leash Steve Sabins has for these pitchers and when he goes in the pen. Sometimes he likes to go in early, but then that bullpen can collapse.
What's been wrong with their defense? Because it was good all year. It feels like it wasn't as good in the Big 12 tournament, and it's just not been as good in the postseason. What's been wrong with it?
Yeah, I would say, without having a crystal ball here, if West Virginia would lose early, if they don't get by Troy, if they don't get out of the first weekend, it's because the defense doesn't show up and they commit errors, and they're costly errors. They should at least get by Troy based on the situation here. But the defense would be the problem. And I don't really know, because the defense was so great most of the year, as you said. But from the Big 12 tournament to the regional to even a little bit in the Super Regional, they were up by so much nobody cared. But the defense wasn't that stellar either. And now we'll see now. So I don't know why. You could argue it's a mental thing. You could say they haven't been to this exact spot before. Is it getting to them? Are they being lax because of the path being easier after UCLA lost? I don't know. Fundamentals has kind of been an issue, but they've been able to score runs. They've been able to hit home runs. They've been able to still win these games. But you would imagine, and Steve Sabins said this too, he said this after the win over Kentucky to win the regional, we're not playing fundamentally sound baseball despite winning. We can't do this and expect to win a national championship. And that is the goal this year for sure. So I don't know why. If I did, I might be on Saban's staff or be a head coach of another program. But it's not been good enough for sure. And you'd imagine it will get back to where it was because it's been enough baseball of being good. But there's also now a body of work where it's not been good enough for several weeks in a row that it is a problem to bring up.
Do you think it'll be a problem this weekend?
Again, it's hard to project. I don't think so because they were certainly better against Cal Poly. This is a good defensive team. The pitching staff is now more rested. The players are more rested. I don't think the stage is going to be too big for them. I do think they're ready for this moment. The program's been building up for this for years. Sabins hasn't been there. The players haven't been to Omaha, but they've been in big games. They've been building up for this. So I'm not going to project that it's just going to be an error fest and they're going to, lose in an upset because of it. But it's definitely something to watch. If you see an error early, if Troy scores off an error, if they allow base runners to linger on longer than normal, whether they're credited as errors or not, those are the things that could get to West Virginia because, as you mentioned, Troy has a stud. West Virginia has about 3 or 4 of them. They also have the Big 12 Pitcher of the Year. They have multiple pitchers that had a below 3 ERA as well. On paper, they should win this convincingly, but that's not always what happens in Omaha, of course.
Yeah. How do you project the potential matchup with Ole Miss?
Yeah, that's a whole different story. I think Ole Miss, or North Carolina, is definitely a program that could be a problem because they can score. West Virginia, again, pitching-wise is going to have to hit their spots. Defensively is going to have to show up. And then Gavin Kelly, Armani Guzman, those players are going to have to show up and are going to have to hit. It'll be interesting if West Virginia can get to any of those pitchers early in games. But, I mean, once you get to these SEC teams, it's a lineup that's more similar to West Virginia. It's a star-studded lineup. Ole Miss has players that can stack runs. They can hit the ball out of the park. So if West Virginia does not make a deep run out of this, I would think it's those games after the Troy matchup that get them. But when you look at what West Virginia's been doing recently, if they play like they've been and they clean up the fundamentals in defense, they really could beat anybody. This is a weird Omaha weekend. This is a weird Omaha College World Series for a couple weeks. LSU's not there. Vanderbilt's not there. The top dogs, the blue blood programs are not there. There is a door open for any of these other SEC schools, but then why not West Virginia as well? So that'll be a rough matchup. Any of these teams will be a rough matchup, but they have the easier bracket. They're on the easier side in comparison here, I would say.
Mike, final one from me. Steve Saban has talked a lot about how this run for West Virginia has not only been special for the program, but for the state of West Virginia overall.
Yeah,
if they advance to the final next week, go to the championship, win the championship, how beneficial, how big will this be for this West Virginia fan base?
Yeah, and I had the governor of the state actually on a show the other day, and he touched on this. Not only the economic impact, the promotional impact. I opened up the segment here talking about. They've been on, national programs. Guys, and I'm sure you know this, people are just now talking about how it's so cool that West Virginia fans sing Country Roads after wins. They've been doing that for 2 decades across sports. John Denver was there at the stadium in the 70s. Rich Rodriguez, in his first tenure, started that tradition for the football program when they were a national power. It's not new, but it's in the national consciousness because of the cool uniqueness of this run by the baseball program.
Yeah.
And the overall top dog basketball, football have kind of been down in recent years. So it's a big, big deal for sure. Now, he was honest, and we asked him, and it's true, and Ren Baker's talked about this, WAD. The overall athletic program actually is relatively sound. The reason why they're up there in win percentages of conference, overall athletic program, different things, fan base, is because of what's happening with the Olympic sports. Basketball team, the men's team, won the crown, but they didn't get in the NCAA. They haven't been for 3 years, which is the longest drought in over 2 decades. The football program hasn't been ranked in 7 years, which is the longest stretch in the history of the program to not get in the AP poll since the advent of it. That needs to fix. Those two have to be national contenders for the overall collective to be sound for the school, for the fan base, for the program, for the state. But when a West Virginia team wins, it helps the state maybe more than any other college team winning for its state. There's no pro team in West Virginia. They are the pro team. That's why Saban said they're the Yankees for these fans. There are close by fans. I'm not saying these fans aren't NFL fans or Major League Baseball fans. A lot of them are Steelers fans, Pirate fans, whatever, if you're in Morgantown. But there's not a team that wears West Virginia on their chest. And that is a big deal to these fans. They love seeing West Virginia on their chest. They feel it's always an underdog story when West Virginia wins, regardless of the history maybe that's underrated for some of the other programs. And everyone's down with this team and supportive of this team. The whole 1.8 million are rooting for this team. That's not the case in all the other states where it's split between other major programs. They're the only other major program, the only other major conference team in the whole state as well. So it's a gigantic deal. And for a little quick perspective, West Virginia has a lot of history with its athletic department, of course, rightful winning national titles. The basketball team does claim one from the early 40s, but a national championship for a major team would be very, very historic and rare through the history of the athletic department, despite other major success and other trophies. So the fan base knows that. Very big deal. They're trying to make it happen and will it to occur as much as they can, which is why they're down there in Omaha after having 2 weekends in Morgantown.
Well said, Mike Asti, who's the managing editor for WV Sports Now. Thanks for your time, Mike. Appreciate it very much.
Absolutely, guys. Have a great rest of your show and hope to be back on with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much, Mike Asti, managing editor at WV Sports Now, talking about West Virginia baseball in the College World Series. First pitch between Troy and West Virginia today at 1 o'clock. He is Taban Turner, T-Chains. I'm Ari Tepke. This is Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We're back with the stories from the week that could have been an email. It's Big 12 Today.
Play for
misses. Look out here. You wanted them to be aggressive, but there's only so much you can do, and Romello Height is knocking on your door. Bachmeier is driven back by that front as Height was the first to get there.
Big 12 Radio, presented by Modelo, heard on TuneIn and watched on Big 12 Studios. Producer Taman, T-Chains, in today for James Wesley. I'm Ari Tepkin on social at Ari Sports. Hearty thank you to our friends at Rally House for all this new merch you see behind us, including the cool Big J plushie you see behind me, or the Baylor Bear teddy bear, the West Virginia football. There's also a K-State Willie the Wildcat bobbing head. What do they call those? Bobbleheads.
Bobbleheads, yeah.
Bobbing head. It's one of them bobbing head things. Well, thanks to Rally House for the merch. Visit rallyhouse.com and Get your team merch now, like this great stuff and plenty of other great stuff. Follow along there. Rally House, a big-time partner of the Big 12. Also a reminder to check out all of our Big 12 Today podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn On Demand. Of course, wherever you get podcasts, Big 12 Radio is there. Make sure to check out our podcasts to make sure you get all of the segments you may have missed. All right, Big 12 Today on Big 12 Radio. We are presented by Modelo, and it's time now for the segment with the biggest stories in sports and the world that could have been an email. T-Chain, some story needed breaking news banners. These needed a reply all. It's time for this could have been an email.
Well, can I start off first with this one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so LeBron James, who, to nobody's surprise, said earlier this week during the NBA Finals that the reason that the New York Knicks were able to go up 2-0 on the San Antonio Spurs was because San Antonio was a boring city with nothing to do. Here's the problem with that, LeBron James. Your playoff record against the San Antonio Spurs in the city of San Antonio is 2-6. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, why are you talking? You said the Knicks won in San Antonio because it's a boring city with nothing to do, yet you don't have a winning record there in your time playing in San Antonio.
He doesn't like to do fun things. He just likes to point out there's nothing to do in San Antonio. By the way, there's a ton to do in San Antonio.
Riverwalk?
Yeah. SeaWorld, Six Flags.
The Alamo?
I mean, also great food. I lived in San Antonio for 5 years. It's a great city with a lot to do. I mean, it's not L.A. or New York or Dallas, but yeah, like, you don't have to be like, this is such a typical, like, out-of-towner thing to say about a city you've been to, like, a few times and haven't really done much in. Like, how do you know, how can I tell you know nothing about the city? Oh, because you're just throwing, like, blank platitudes out like it's Cleveland.
When I saw this, and this happened following game 2, I was a little bit in shock because, like, I remember the Spurs getting swept by the Cavs being swept by the Spurs in 2007. I remember them losing in 2014. I know they beat the when he was with the Heat, they beat the Spurs in 2013. But the Spurs have owned you, bro.
Yeah. and remember, the year the Heat beat the Spurs, it was because of a Ray Allen shot that had nothing to do with LeBron that sent the series into a game 7.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you needed Ray Allen in order to get one of those titles.
Email LeBron James hates San Antonio.
Email LeBron James is stupid and likes to hear himself talk.
LeBron James likes to hear himself talk?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Here's another one. LeBron James thinks he's the greatest of all time.
I saw that.
And, I mean, you know, you might see that headline and be like, yeah, I already know this. He's been saying this for like 5 years now. And you're right. He has been saying this for 5 years now. You know, I know Michael Jordan's the GOAT. He never called himself the GOAT. Everybody else calls him the GOAT. LeBron's the only one out here lobbying for himself. The same guy that gave himself the King nickname, the self-proclaimed King, is now self-proclaiming himself the GOAT. Now, his latest GOAT calling is he's not taking anybody over him. And then his rationale was, if you ask Michael, he'd say the same thing. You ask Kobe, he'd say the same thing. Magic. He said, but I think Mike will say the same thing. Rest his soul, Kobe would say the same thing. Magic will say the same thing. Bird will say the same thing. Shaq could say the same. No.
So he's naming people that he said would all say the same thing, even though they never said it. Is that what I'm getting at? Like, they're outside of Kobe, rest in peace. Everybody else he mentioned could openly say it, but they've actually never said it.
By the way, okay, Kobe is not one of the greatest of all time. I'm sorry. He was a very, very good player, arguably a top 10 player of all time. Arguably. But, man, is he overrated all time. I'm not going to lie to you. I think he's the most overrated player of all time.
Listen, I think there is this happens with celebrities. When you die tragically, unfortunately, there's an elevation that, you know, you're the way we view you is a little bit different than when you were alive. So, like, I get it. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I get why they say that. It's kind of like in remembrance of Kobe. Maybe.
Yeah, you're 100% right, but it doesn't make it any right. It's important to point out. Like, I think in the conversation for the greatest of all time, you're probably looking at Michael, Kareem, and LeBron. Like, those are the three that probably have a legitimate argument for it. Nobody else. Magic, Larry Bird, Kobe. These are all guys you could throw in the conversation for, Wilt. Like, we could all throw in the top 10.
Yeah.
I would put Tim Duncan in that conversation.
I have Michael as the greatest. If for a generation like our kids, kids a little bit older, Gen Zs, when they say LeBron, even though I disagree with them, I get it because I remember being a kid and my dad telling me about Wilt and Kareem and Magic and stuff. Guys I never saw play live. I was just like, oh, who cares? So I get that notion. That just naturally comes, but I still think it's Michael Jordan.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous.
All right, I got another one.
All right.
The President of the United States, Donald Trump, called Stephen A. Smith dumb as a rock. Now, here's the thing. They're kind of beefing during the finals because Donald Trump showed up to Game 3 of the finals and whatnot, and Stephen A. Smith don't come. Donald Trump was like, I think he's dumb as a rock, arrogant, blah, blah, blah. Okay, who has Donald Trump not called dumb as a rock or arrogant? And when has Stephen A. Smith not responded to somebody who talks about him?
Well, and if you're Stephen A., you probably should respond because that shows your relevance nationally.
Which he did. He responded by saying he wants to debate you, whether it's at the White House, whether it's on his radio show, wherever it may be. And he was like, we can show who's really arrogant or dumb or whatever Donald Trump. But, like, Donald Trump calls everyone that. So it's like, email. Donald Trump calls another celebrity dumb as a rock. I'm not surprised whatsoever. Although I think if you had told me 11 years ago, before Donald Trump was ever president, that Donald Trump and Stephen A. Smith would be beefing with each other during the NBA Finals, would have never believed you.
Yeah. Or if you would have said President Trump and Stephen A. Smith are battling, you'd be like, what? That happened?
Battling what? What? They're both from New York. What? They think Manhattan's better than Queens? Or I don't know.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can complain about with Stephen A. Smith, but being dumb ain't one of them.
Fair enough. Don't even get me started.
Yeah. What would Stephen A.'s argument be against Trump here?
Brother, let me tell you something, Donald. Remember, I'm Stephen A. I'll debate you anywhere and everywhere. It'll be at the White House. It could be in Manhattan. It could be in Piscataway. It could be in Florida at Mar-a-Lago. It could be at Kim Jong-un's front door. I don't care. I'll be there.
Have you been paying any attention to the Taylor Swift Jason Kelce wedding?
No.
What? You have not been all over this story,
Oh,
David?
my God.
Andy Reid was asked during minicamp whether or not he's going to be attending this wedding. So I've just got caught up on this whole thing. So I knew that they were engaged because, of course, I did.
Of course.
But apparently there was all this talk about they're going to get married before training camp in July. And so now, like, all of these publications have basically, like, reported on specific dates and venues without any actual backing of it. So it's like a huge mystery when and where they're getting married, which is no surprise to me. But now you have all of these publications that are trying to figure out, like, do investigative work to figure out when and where it is. And so Reid was then asked about it. Have you been invited? So they're just looking for breadcrumbs to pick up. Because if he says he's invited, then there's been a guest list. If there's a guest list, there must be a date and a venue. So his response was, can't talk about it.
Oof. I have a confession to make to you. I lied.
You've been following it.
Vaguely. Vaguely.
Okay, so what have I missed?
So
fill me in on some of the details here that I've missed.
There is a conspiracy theory. And you know James loves conspiracy theories, but there is a conspiracy theory.
It's too bad James isn't here today because I know he knows everything about this wedding.
I know. The conspiracy is that Travis and Taylor actually got married a while ago, that they're just playing this out because it benefits both of them to be in the spotlight.
Or the conspiracy theory goes the other way, which is they're not even together. They don't even like each other.
You notice Taylor Swift was at Game 4 of the Knicks game the other day. Travis was not there.
Was she at the game? I didn't realize she was at the
She
game.
was- she was there.
I happened to be watching the game, and I don't know that they ever showed her acknowledge that Taylor Swift was at the game.
They showed her in the first quarter, and then when they did the comeback, she was jumping around. And a lot of people called her out because she was wearing a Knicks shirt, rooting for the Knicks, even though in the last series when the Knicks played the Cavs, she was with Travis in Cleveland rooting against the Knicks.
Yeah, I will give her the benefit of the doubt here because of Travis being from Cincinnati.
Fair.
From the Ohio area, so maybe he's a Cleveland fan. But yeah, I mean, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because, like, you look at some of the celebs that have been huge Knicks fans forever, and you see, like, I don't like Spike Lee. I like some of his movies, but not a big fan of him now. And, like, but he's been there forever.
Yeah.
Like, been there since the 90s.
I remember when I lived in New York, when I was living there, I went to 2 games at the Garden. And the celebrities who actually go there in January and February. And this is when they were bad.
Bad.
Yeah, like bad. Like they are like Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, Christopher Maloney, Mariska Hargitay. They are diehard Knicks fans.
Diehard Knicks fans. I'd put Spike Lee in there.
No, I met Spike when I met at SiriusXM. Very nice guy, and he is a diehard Knicks fan. I asked him about the Knicks, and he looked like he wanted to cry. Because at the time, they were bad. They were a bad basketball team. Now they are 1 win away from being champions.
Crazy. I'm hoping they get to a Game 7.
Same.
I just want the series to go 7.
Even though I want the Knicks to win just because as a Mavs fan, I don't need to see the Spurs have more success. I'm petty.
This one didn't need to be an email, but I need to mention it. Deion Sanders announces he's cancer-free. Quote, "I got my life back." It's amazing to me how when people bring up how bad Colorado was last year that nobody mentions, their head coach had bladder cancer, had to have his bladder removed.
Yeah, agreed. 100% agree. And cancer sucks. Like, I'm so glad he's cancer-free. Cancer sucks.
It sucks. The problem with cancer is it just keeps coming back, man. Let's hope he stays cancer-free for a long, long, long time.
All the best to you, Prime.
Yes, he's a gift to football and to the sport of college football. There's no doubt about that. All right, we are back on Monday. We've got the consensus number 14 of the Big 12 to go through, plus reacting to the weekend in the College World Series. Plus, who knows where this Brendan Sorsby saga goes next. It's all on Monday's edition of Big 12 Today. Thanks, of course, to T-Chains, Taman Turner for filling in today for James. Thanks, as always, to Anthony Smith, our great producer at Big 12 Studios. I'm Ari Temkin. We're back on Monday, presented by Modelo. But for now, we're out. Peace.